Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Flash Forward, the show where I talk about every single issue of The Flash, including miniseries and spin offs. And this week, we're going to be talking about Mark Waid's final arc in his Flash run, as well as like a couple of filler issues, and then Mark Waid's final issue before Jeff Johns takes over as the main head writer of The Flash. Mark Waid will come back eventually in the future, but it's going to be a long time before that happens. Like, this is his last story for quite a while. It's called the Dark Flash Saga. Previously in The Flash, Wally traveled to the 30th century, and he hasn't come back. But another Flash has come back in his place. A darker, he has like a darker redder suit with silver lightning bolt and stuff on it, and he appears to be a lot older, like quite a bit older than Wally. So there's kind of this mystery surrounding this new Flash, and Jay Garrick has briefly seen this Flash, or at least knows of his existence, because in the previous issue, this mysterious Flash visited Wally's house and took all of Wally's journals and also journals about Barry, and so he's kind of wondering who this new Flash is as well. So before we get into this, before we get into issue 152, if you're watching on YouTube, then please hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. And comment below about The Flash, about this arc, and what you think about it. And let's get straight into it. Issue 152, written by Mark Waid and Brian Augustine, with art by Paul Pelletier and Vince Russell. And Jose Marzan Jr. will eventually take over inking after this issue as well. He comes back to ink the series, and this will be like the art and writing team for the next, 9 issues. So the issue begins with Jay Garrick and Angela, who is Wally's current love interest, because Linda and Wally were going to get married, and Linda Park was stolen from their wedding and has been taken completely out of time itself. Nobody remembers who she is, including Wally. And so her place in the universe has been replaced by this woman named Angela. So Jay Garrick and Angela are investigating a dead body. It's the body of a man who had come into conflict with Dr. Alchemy in the past. And they've come to the conclusion that Dr. Alchemy was responsible for this guy's death because his body seemingly just exploded, it just blew up. And Jay realizes he finds a piece of ventricle from this guy's heart, and the ventricle has turned into oxidized potassium. So they come to the conclusion that maybe Dr. Alchemy transformed this guy's insides into oxidized potassium. Jay Garrick believes that Dr. Alchemy would have left some kind of trap behind, and so as these guys are moving this dead body, like these cops, the body sets itself alight, and Jay's just like, don't! And then the body just explodes, sending everyone flying, and then the air that they're breathing transforms into non-breathable toxic air, and Jay realizes that they're all in grave danger, and that's when the Dark Flash enters. Dark Flash shows up and gets everybody out of the building, and he resuscitates Angela, which Angela is happy about because her and Dark Flash have been seeing each other recently. And, she's curious who he is. He's quite suave because he's mysterious. Jay tries to introduce himself to Dark Flash, and he's like, hey, are you one of the Flashes that we met in the Chain Lightning arc that just happened? And Dark Flash just kind of ignores him and is like, nope. And he leaves, and Jay is just like, whoa, hold it right there. I don't take attitude from newcomers. You're going to run the walk. Start talking the talk. Who are you? He's just like, I'm the Flash, and runs away. And so Jay chases after him. And as he chases after the Dark Flash, he sees a shootout happening in the middle of the street. And he assumes that the Dark Flash is going to stop the shootout, but it seems like he doesn't. He just runs straight past them, which causes Jay to believe that this Dark Flash really isn't a good person. But it turns out that Dark Flash did stop the shootout because he has the ability to steal speed from things, which Jay has never seen before. Wally can give speed to people, but it seems like this Dark Flash can take speed from objects, including bullets. So he takes all the speed from the bullets, and the bullets fall to the ground. And then Jay is able to take the guns away from the guys. He then continues running after Dark Flash, and luckily Jay has a couple of friends who can help him. So Impulse and Max Mercury and Jesse Quickle show up to surround Dark Flash and stop him from getting away. Bart tries to pull Dark Flash's mask off, but the Dark Flash throws him off, and they're like, hey, don't hurt him. And Dark Flash is like, he's going to be fine. I'm not hurting anyone. And Jesse and Max try to grab him, and they end up just running into each other because the Dark Flash has managed to run away. Jesse points out the fact that, like, they're dealing with this Dark Flash, and Wally still hasn't come back from the 30th century. And Bart comes to the conclusion that Wally is missing because maybe he's looking for Linda. And everyone is just kind of like, who's Linda? Like, who are you talking about? And Bart's just like, Linda, you know, Wally's girlfriend. They were going to get married. He doesn't know her last name. He just knows her first name. And they just presume that Bart is talking about his imaginary friend. And so Max is just like, stop talking about your imaginary friend. And meanwhile, we find the real Linda, who is in a mysterious room with a mysterious person. And that's when it's revealed to her that she's stuck in a place outside of time itself. She's surrounded entirely by the memories that were stolen from those around her, because this guy didn't just take Linda, he took the memories of her as well, because taking her wasn't enough. If he took her, she would just be missing, and so everyone would go looking for her. By taking her memories, and their memories of her, it means that she doesn't exist. This guy warns Linda not to leave the room, because if she enters the time vortex, she'll probably die. And she ignores him and jumps out. And he's like, no, you fool, you're condemning yourself to oblivion, stop! And she's like, I'd rather die than not know where Wally is. Because right now she's led to believe that Wally could possibly be dead. So she decides to jump into the time vortex to try and find him. Meanwhile, Dr. Alchemy is turning apples into gold because he's managed to gain full control over his own powers. And that's when Dark Flash shows up to try and attack him. But Dr. Alchemy creates a solid silicone wall to bounce Dark Flash off. And as Dark Flash bounces backwards and falls onto the ground, he starts sliding towards some grass, and Dr. Alchemy turns the grass into steel spikes, which are intended to shred Dark Flash up, but he manages to vibrate his way through the ground and pull Dr. Alchemy's legs into the ground. But Dr. Alchemy is like, you can't stop me, I'm Dr. Alchemy, I can do anything. I can literally turn the water under the bridge into acid. And Dark Flash is just like, you've wasted enough of my time. And he uses another power that he reveals, which is the ability to multiply himself using speed. And then he shows another power where he places like speed lightning into Dr. Alchemy's brain and basically shortens Dr. Alchemy's brain and makes him have a seizure by overloading his brain. So he leaves Dr. Alchemy to have a seizure on the ground and decides that he needs to go and save the bridge because the bridge is being eaten by acid because Dr. Alchemy turned the water into acid. So he goes off to do that. And Jay watches this all happen on the TV. He sees Dr. Alchemy get taken to hospital and he throws his hat in anger because this Dark Flash is way too dark and like edgy and it's really getting on Jay's nerves. He's like, this is not how we operate as superheroes. And Joanna's just like, I'll make you a cup of tea, that'll help you calm down. And that's when Dark Flash shows up. He picks up Jay's helmet and gives it to him, his hat, and Jay's just like, why are you here? And Dark Flash is like, I want us to work together. I'll look after Central City, You look after Keystone City. The reason why I'm asking is because I need your endorsement so that the city will trust me because they trust you. And Jay's just like, why would I ever give you my endorsement? And Dark Flash is like, this is why. And he pulls his mask off and reveals his identity to Jay Garrick, but we don't get to see it. And Jay's just like, but how? And he's like, I can't tell you that. Yeah, just keep this our secret and tell the world that as far as you're concerned, I'm the Flash. Will you? And Jay's just like, yeah, of course, but... And the Dark Flash is like, I have my reasons for this. Just vouch for me. That's all I ask. And then before he leaves, he turns around to Jay and he says, also, you're never too old to be a hero, Jay. And then he leaves. Because Jay's been kind of having second thoughts about being a hero because he's getting older. He's getting self-conscious about his age. The Dark Flash gives some flowers to Angela while she's working. And then he builds a giant lightning bolt in front of the Flash Museum and runs into it. And when he runs into this lightning bolt, he goes to some other kind of room or secret realm or something where all of Wally and Barry's journals are that he's been hoarding. And then he just looks through them, picks up a portrait, and he's like, I'm sorry. And he puts the portrait back, and then he runs out again. And Jay is determined to figure out what the mysteries surrounding the Dark Flash are. And that's where issue 152 ends, right there. And so now we move on to issue 153, The Fury of the Folded Man. So the issue begins with this man known as Edward Gauss, who will later be known as the Folded Man, or I guess he already is known as that, because he's created some sort of suit that some cops are trying to get from him, because apparently he's stolen a bunch of tech from this guy named Devlin Bridges, and the cops are here at his house trying to take him in. And also, Edward has this suit that was also taken from Devlin. So the cops enter his house, and Edward seems to have disappeared, and we find a board on his wall with schematics for his suit on them. But what the cops don't know is that the schematics on this board are Edward himself, because he's turned himself 2D. Because Folded Man has the ability to travel through dimensions, 2D, 3D, 4D. So while he's in his 2D state, he uses his 4D powers to make a giant hand appear out of thin air, which grabs one of the cops while his back is turned and kills him, with his friend in shock trying to shoot at Edward Gauss's hand to, no success. So the next day, or like a later day, they have a funeral for this guy whose name is Lou, and Angela is there because Lou is a friend of hers, and the Dark Flash shows up and is like, you're probably feeling real down about this, so how's about we go on a date so I can help you feel better? So he grabs Angela and he runs off with her and takes her to France, where they have some stuff to eat. And Angela is like, you've been dating me for like 4 weeks now, and you still haven't shown me your identity? Like, why? And the Dark Flash is just like, I can't. I just can't show you. And Angela's like, alright, I understand. And so Dark Flash opens up a little bit to Angela and says, like, the reason why I wanted to do this for you is because I myself have gone through a loss. I lost somebody, and it's my fault. Like, I blame myself for losing them, and so, I don't want you to have to feel the same way that I do. And Angela's like, I'm sorry, like, I'm sure you didn't mean to be. And Dark Flash is like, of course not. But you want to investigate your friend's death? And Angela's just like, together? Yeah. That sounds great. Let's do it. What they don't know is that Bart Allen was there the entire time, and he was invisible watching them. Because Max Mercury wants to find out the secret behind the Dark Flash. And so he has Bart tailing them, trying to figure out Dark Flash's identity. And it's kind of cute because Jesse Quick is trying to get Max to play along with Bart because Bart's pretending to be a secret agent. He calls himself Double O Bart or like Double O Impulse. And Max Mercury is going by like Commander Mercury, which is really fun. And Bart is just like, can't we just give up on this? Like, Jay trusts this Dark Flash. Why can't we trust him? And Max is like, because I just don't trust him. Like, I don't care what Jay says. Even Donna says that she trusts, like, Donna Troy from the Titans. She's seen who this Dark Flash is. She says that she trusts him. But Max just won't trust him until he knows for sure who this person is. And he's like, this Flash mentioned about losing someone. Maybe that person was Wally. Maybe Wally is not here because of that. And maybe this Dark Flash is Barry Allen. And Bart brings up Linda again. And Max is just like, can you stop talking about your imaginary friend for once? We got more important things to talk about. Meanwhile, Linda lands in the middle of what looks like Keystone City after jumping into the time vortex in the last issue. And the first thing she sees is Wally West. And she runs up to him and she hugs him. And Wally is like, oh my god, Linda, my angel. Like, I can't believe you're here. I thought I lost you. And that's when a bunch of authority shows up. Like, a bunch of cops and stuff. And they're like, Walter West, we have you surrounded. And Wally is just like, can't you leave us alone? All we want is peace. And he's like, Linda, get to the side. Like, I'll handle these guys. And to her horror, Linda watches as Wally basically runs around, like, beating these guys to a pulp and possibly killing some of them. And she's just like, this isn't my Wally. Like, where am I? Meanwhile, Dark Flash and Angela head over to Devlin Bridges Corporations, where they find Devlin Bridges. He knows that Edward Gauss has stolen his technology. He's not interested in... he's not, like, super in a hurry to get his technology back. In fact, what he has done is he sent a mercenary group after Edward Gauss, which is a problem to Dark Flash and Angela. Like, they don't want Gauss to be killed. While they're talking to Devlin about Edward Gauss, because Devlin tells him about how he worked for him and created the suit and now he's stolen the suit, Edward Gauss enters the building through the floor because he's 2D, appears in front of them and attempts to kill Devlin, but Dark Flash grabs Devlin and runs with him and Angela, and they all escape from the building to get away from Edward. And that's when Devlin explains to them how Edward's powers work. So Edward can transport between dimensions, like I said. So when he's in the when he's in the second dimension, if he looks at a rock on the ground, he can see it. But if you draw a line around it, it's like a wall for him. But then he can just enter the third dimension or the fourth dimension and get around that wall. So basically, in the fourth dimension, he's pretty much a god. He can do anything. And that's when Gauss appears from behind them, having entered from the fourth dimension. And so Dark Flash tries to attack him, but Edward Gauss, being a god, rips the ground below Dark Flash, and Dark Flash punches him anyway. It's kind of funny. He's just like, ugh, and punches him in the face. And then Gauss just punches him back and grabs Dark Flash and tries to rip him apart. But then Dark Flash vibrates his body and realizes that Gauss can't touch him if he's vibrating. So Gauss goes after Angela instead, and Dark Flash is just like, no, and tries to stop him. And Gauss just slams his fist on Dark Flash, knocking him out. And then he grabs Dark Flash, and Dark Flash loses conscious and then wakes up in the fourth dimension. So Gauss has absorbed Dark Flash into the fourth dimension and announces to him that he's going to be stuck there forever, leaving Dark Flash pretty terrified. Like, it's not a good situation to be in. He's stuck in the fourth dimension, and we'll find out how he gets out of the fourth dimension in issue 154. So in issue 154, obviously it begins with Dark Flash in the fourth dimension, watching as Angela is outside, and basically Gauss is just like, while you're in the fourth dimension, you can't stop me from killing them. So he goes to kill Devlin and Angela. Angela has her gun, and she actually shoots Gauss, and that's when we discover that Gauss can be harmed in his fourth dimensional form. So she shoots him, and Gauss goes into the second dimension. Angela tries shooting the ground, but they can't do anything to him while he's in 2D. So they decide to run over to a nearby barn away from Gauss. Gauss follows after them. He grabs a nearby tractor and pulls it apart, and then starts dumping the gasoline from the tractor all along the ground in order to set Angela and Devlin on fire. But as he does this, Wally notices that Gauss is still in the fourth dimension whenever he's messing with the outside world. Like, he never leaves it entirely. Like, he'll poke half his body out, but the rest of him will still be in the fourth dimension. So not Wally, sorry, I'm so used to calling the Flash as Wally. This is Dark Flash we're talking about. Dark Flash sees this is an opportunity to vibrate through Gauss's body to get out of the fourth dimension. So he tries it out and it works. He vibrates through Gauss's body and gets out of the fourth dimension. And that also hurts Gauss long enough for Gauss to be in pain, so that Dark Flash has time to put out the fire. And then, so after he puts out the fire, he grabs Devlin and Angela and runs away with them to safety, to figure out what to do next. Meanwhile, Bart, Max, and Jessie are investigating the lightning bolt that the Dark Flash enters to get to his secret base. Bart says he's been in there a million times and he can't find anything. And that's when they come to the conclusion that maybe this is all just fake and that the Dark Flash isn't transporting to another dimension. What he's doing is he's vibrating himself underground to a room hidden underground. So Bart drills his way through the ground and finds a hidden base underground. And Jessie suggests that it might actually be one of the Turtles' hidden bases from a much earlier issue. They fought the Turtle and he has a bunch of hidden bases hidden everywhere. And this might be one of them. And when they go in there, they find a bunch of journals. Like, they find the Wally and Barry journals. And so they come, like, this makes Max even more suspicious. And Bart gets disappointed because he tries to look for any information on Linda and he can't find any. And Max is just like, stop talking about your imaginary friend. So, finding all of these journals, Max is like, we're gonna get our answers straight from the source. We're gonna find the Dark Flash and we're gonna tell him to show us his identity. Meanwhile, in the alternate timeline that Linda seems to be in, she is helpless watching Wally beat up a bunch of these cops. So Wally grabs her and runs away with her, and she's like, let go of me, you're hurting me, like, you're not my Wally. And Wally's just like, but you called me Wally. And she's like, yeah, but you're not my Wally, you're a psychopath. And as he is, kind of thrown back by Linda saying this Wally gets hit by a bunch of sound waves, and it turns out that the Pied Piper has shown up to help Linda. This Pied Piper says that he used to be friends with Wally, but he's been forced to try and take down Wally now. So he tells Linda to get away, because he'll keep Wally busy. And as Linda runs away, she hears, it's kind of horrifying, she hears Pied Piper being killed by Wally in the distance. She just hears him going like, oh God, help me! Help me! She runs back to the Flash Museum, and she finds a statue of herself, where she discovers that in this timeline, she sacrificed herself to save Keystone City from the villain Cobra. So this is like an alternate timeline of issue 100, where Wally didn't show up in time, and Linda was killed. And so Wally went insane, trying to take down every single villain and kill them, and like, apparently he killed Heatwave, according to Pied Piper. And so, yeah, he's gone insane. And Linda is basically trapped with a psychopathic version of her her husband. Dark Flash, Angela, and Devlin all head to the Central City Memorial Hospital because apparently this place is significant to Gauss, and Dark Flash knows for a fact that Gauss will come here, and he does. Gauss shows up and he attacks the Dark Flash, sending him flying, almost pulling off Dark Flash's mask. He has to be like, "Oh crap, my mask! Gotta put it on." And that's when Devlin's mercenary group shows up to kill Gauss, and Angela is like, "Devlin, you idiot! You shouldn't have hired these guys. Gauss is going to kill them." And that's what he does. He almost kills these guys. He transforms them into 2D and tries to kill them. But Dark Flash manages to save them and Angela and Devlin. He grabs Devlin and Angela and runs through Gauss, and that's when we discover the truth of Edward Gauss and why he hates Devlin. The battle stops for a moment because Edward wants to... Dark Flash is basically like, "Why are you doing this?" And Edward explains to them that he was hired by Devlin to build the suit because his daughter has an incurable disease, and Devlin promised that he would cure her if he made the suit. He made the suit, and after he finished making the suit, his daughter happened to die. And he believes that Devlin killed her on purpose, and now he's trying to take the suit back. And now he wants to kill Devlin. And Dark Flash decides to use Devlin as bait. He's not going to let Devlin die, but he decides to use him as bait for Gauss. He allows Gauss to attack Devlin, and as Gauss goes for Devlin, Dark Flash grabs a bunch of metal rods from nearby and he throws them at Gauss, and he vibrates them through Gauss's body, because when Gauss is in the fourth dimension, he can be hurt. And so by vibrating the metal rods through Gauss's body, he basically pins him like a butterfly in a bug collection. And Devlin agrees to take Gauss back to his laboratories to experiment and try and figure out a way to get the costume off of Gauss. And Dark Flash is like, "Good luck getting that off of him. I don't think you're going to be able to." So after this unfortunate adventure, feel bad for Gauss after everything he's gone through, Dark Flash and Angela decide that they need some time alone in Angela's office, so they head back there and they have a little smooch, because they're pretty bushed after everything that's happened. And that's when Max shows up and ruins the moment and is like, "Dark Flash, tell us your identity. Who are you? Why do you have all these journals?" Meanwhile, Linda is still trying to get away from this psychopathic Wally, and she finds her gravestone, and this Wally punches through her gravestone and is like, "I'm not letting you get away from me. You are my angel. I've prayed for you to come back. You finally come back." And Linda's like, "No, get off of me, please." And he's like, "I'm not letting you go. Not again." And that's when a lightning bolt strikes from the clouds in front of them, and another Wally West appears in front of them. I'm assuming our Wally West, the one that went missing. So he appears in front of Linda and Psycho Wally, and is like, "Take your hands off of her," and goes straight for Psycho Wally. And meanwhile, the Dark Flash finally reveals himself. He pulls off his mask and reveals that his name is Wally West, and he's from 10 years in the future. And we find that Dark Flash Wally has a lightning bolt scar over his eye. And we end the issue on that little cliffhanger. So the next story that we're going to be talking about is actually a story within Secret Files and Origins issue 2 of The Flash. It takes place after the last issue, before the next issue. The story is called 21st Century Rogue. Still written by Mark Waid and Brian Augustine, but this time with art by Ron Lim and Dennis Jank. So this story takes place from the point of view of this character named Tony Gamby. Tony Gamby is the nephew of Peter Gamby, who is the tailor for the Rogues and a lot of other supervillains like the Riddler and stuff. So he grew up with the Rogues. They taught him how to use all their weapons. They've kind of become like uncles to him. So he's a huge fan of them, and he's especially a huge fan of watching them fight the Flash. He loves rooting for them. And this new Flash, Dark Flash, has shown up in town, who we now know is Wally. And he's really excited to see the Dark Flash fight Captain Boomerang and Captain Cold in the city. They've stolen a van full of money, and so Dark Flash shows up to fight them. So Tony's really excited. Boomerang tries to throw a bunch of boomerangs at Dark Flash, but Dark Flash just sucks the speed out of all of them, which leaves Tony kind of breathless. And before Captain Cold can freeze the van, Dark Flash runs around it so fast that he starts melting the ice, which sends Captain Cold flying backwards and breaking his arm. And Tony is like, wow, this Dark Flash is kind of rough. Like, he's breaking Captain Cold's arm. Boomerang tries to throw a couple of bomberangs at a couple of civilians, but Dark Flash takes the speed out of them, and the bomberangs fall right in front of Captain Boomerang, blowing him up. And Tony's like, oh my god, you could have killed him! And Captain Cold is like, holy crap. And Captain Boomerang is left out of commission, and he's never gonna walk again. And Dark Flash is just like, whoops, I thought his boomerang shot streamers and confetti. And that's when Tony drops out of the sky and lands on top of Dark Flash and is like, Boomerang! I got a van over there, we gotta get out of here fast! And because he landed on Dark Flash, he knocked him out. So Cold and Tony get Boomerang out of there, and they take him to Gamby's shop to help him recuperate. So they take him to the shop and they bandage him up. And Boomerang is so badly hurt that he's covered in bandages, and like I said, he's never gonna walk again. The rest of the rogues show up at Gamby's shop in order to see Boomer and figure out what they're gonna do next. They decide that they're gonna go and try and fight the Dark Flash, but Boomerang is like, if you go and fight the Dark Flash, you are going to die. No, what we need is a new rogue to take on this new Flash. But, who's it gonna be? Who's gonna be the new rogue? So Tony decides to volunteer to be the new rogue. And Boomerang reveals that he's friends with T.O. Morrow. T.O. Morrow is an evil scientist who built Red Tornado and a bunch of evil robots. And he's also teamed up with Ivo in the past, Professor Ivo, the creator of Amazo. So he's hired T.O. Morrow to try and create a new rogue. So what T.O. Morrow has done is he's created a machine that if somebody sits in, that it will give them the powers to turn into a rogue. Basically, the idea is that using the rogue's weapons, whoever sits in this chair will absorb their weapons, transforming them into a villain who has the abilities of all the rogues without having to use the weaponry. So Tony sits in the chair, and they turn the machine on, and he absorbs all of their weapons, including Heatwave's gun, because apparently Heatwave is a good guy again. Mark Wave retconned that he was a villain again in Underworld Unleashed, and then doubled back on his retcon and made him a good guy, so whatever. But it's just referenced off panel. Tony absorbs all the guns, and he transforms into a new villain who he names himself Replicant. He's like a translucent villain with energy flowing inside him. They decide to test Replicant's abilities by sending him after the governor, who is currently doing his run. So Replicant goes to put the governor in danger. He figures out that he can control the weather like Weather Wizard. He can absorb the policeman's gun as well and shoot bullets. And because he has Dr. Alchemy's abilities, he can then turn those bullets into plutonium and shoot plutonium bullets. It's kind of crazy. He then turns the acid into rain, causing the cops to run away in peril. And that's when Dark Flash shows up to fight him. He smashes straight into Replicant, sending him flying across nearby river. So Replicant creates a huge fist of ice and punches Dark Flash, and then shoots a bunch of heat wave flames at him. And Dark Flash manages to dodge his abilities and try and send like the ice back at him with his tornado arm. Like he like whips up a tornado arm and tries to shoot Replicant's ice spikes back at him. But Replicant proves to be too powerful, and he manages to use all of his abilities on Dark Flash, seemingly destroying him. But it turns out that he didn't kill Dark Flash. Dark Flash just vibrated his way into the ground. He appears behind Replicant and tries to attack him, but Replicant has tricked Dark Flash by using a mirror Replicant, and he's actually hiding behind a nearby tree. So Dark Flash runs off looking for Replicant. Meanwhile, he doesn't know that Replicant is right behind him, and so Replicant just lets Dark Flash go on a aimless search for him, because now's not the day that Replicant beats Dark Flash. He's gonna fight him again another day, on the orders of Boomerang. So Replicant heads back to Boomerang, and he says, like, whenever you need me to be Replicant, just let me know and I'll turn into Replicant. And Boomerang's just like, that Teomoro piece of shit, he didn't tell you, kid? You're never gonna be normal again. You are Replicant forever. You're always gonna look like this. And Replicant thinks about the fact, Tony is just like, the fact, like, I'm never gonna be human again. Like, am I okay with being a rogue 24/7? And he's like, hell yeah, that's what I've always wanted. And the Boomerang is just like, yeah, the time of the Flash, like, the time of the Flash's end is coming soon. And that's where the end of the story is. And it leads directly into Flash issue 155, Replicant versus Flash. Alright, issue 155. Things start to get even crazier. So it's going to take me a bit to explain everything, because we got like 3 different timelines going on at the same time, or 3 different things happening at once. The first thing is Replicant is hunting down different rogues to take their weapons from them and kill them if they resist him, but he won't if they don't. He finds this guy named Angleman, who is kind of a joke villain. You can probably guess what he does. Based on his names, he has angular weapons. He has like a trigonometry like appliance, and Replica absorbs it and says basically that as long as Angleman just gets out of the country, Replicant promises not to kill him. And then he continues searching for more villains to absorb their weapons. Meanwhile, Wally, Dark Flash, I'm just going to call him Dark Flash so we know who I'm talking about. Dark Flash and Angela are getting deeper in love because, like, ever since he revealed his identity to her, but she still has to keep his identity a secret from everyone else that she knows. But Wally has become so comfortable with her that he actually wants to make a declaration. Like, he wants to ask her something because he loves her so much. Meanwhile, Jessie and Bart are thinking about the fact that they found out Dark Flash's identity and that he's Wally, but they're still confused because, you know, Wally went missing, he came back 10 years older. What happened during those 10 years? And Bart's just like, how are we even going to find that out? And Jessie's like, maybe we should go ask him. And Bart is like, yeah, maybe he'll know where Linda is. And Jessie's like, maybe he was looking for Linda during those 10 years. And Jessie's like, stop talking about your imaginary friend that no one else has heard of. And then Jessie's like, I guess we're just going to have to ask him what he was doing. And Bart runs off. And Jessie's just like, Bart, like, where did you go? Turns out Bart has gone to find Dark Flash. And as Dark Flash is about to ask Angela to marry him, Bart shows up and is like, where's Linda? And Dark Flash is just like, or Bart is like, where's Linda? And Dark Flash is like, hey, private conversation, brat. He's like, it's Bart, not brat. He's like, only because you were named by a dyslexic. Understand one thing. Never ask me about Linda. And Angela's just like, who's Linda? And meanwhile, Linda is having a confrontation with Psycho Wally and who we believe is the real Wally West, or like the good Wally West. And so Psycho Wally is like, "Who are you?" And Wally's like, "My name is Wally West. I'm the Flash." And Psycho Wally's like hell. And they start fighting each other. And Psycho Wally tells Linda, to get behind him. And he's like, "Oh wait, no, never mind that. Right now, find cover before he..." And Wally hits Psycho Wally with a lamppost, sending him flying into a nearby building. And he grabs Linda, and Linda is like, "It's not okay, you lunatic. Let go of me, Wally." And then a bunch of gusts of wind start coming up around them. And Wally's just like, "Relax. I don't know where the whirlwind came from, but Linda?" And it turns out that the Wally that we thought was Psycho Wally isn't actually Psycho Wally. They kind of swapped places during the fight. And so we're led to believe that this guy is Psycho Wally, but it turns out that this guy is actually Wally West. He tries to find their house and they can't find it, and that's when Linda comes to the conclusion that this is the real Wally. He's like, you remember we had a house? What was the last thing you remember? And this Wally is like, the last thing I remember is that, we were getting married. And before he can finish his sentence, Linda kisses him and is like, "Yep, it's you. I knew it was you. You're the real Wally." And Linda asks... So basically, first of all, Linda explains to Wally where they are. They're in a time where she died at the hands of Cobra. And that other Wally is a version of him that failed to save her. And then she asks Wally what happened to him. And he explains to her that when he destroyed Cobalt Blue, he entered the Speed Force itself and was stuck in there. And then Linda comes to the conclusion that he was stuck in the Speed Force because she was outside of time itself. So he'd lost his anchor. But as soon as she escaped out of the time vortex and ended up in this timeline, it brought Wally to her because she is his anchor. And so that's why they're both in the same timeline. That's why Wally suddenly showed up at the time that he did, because she's his anchor. And that's when Psycho Wally shows up and is like, "I don't know who you are. I don't care. Nobody will take her away from me. Not now. Nobody." And he grabs a giant spiked piece of metal and just a big metal pipe, and he just stabs it into Wally's chest. But he doesn't actually stab Wally. Basically, Wally vibrated at the last second, but Psycho Wally counteracted this by vibrating the pipe. So it's not hurting Wally, but it's keeping him in place, and he is stuck. Meanwhile, Piper destroys Pied Piper in the regular timeline, back in the main timeline again, destroys Dark Flash's lightning bolt base in order to get his attention. Basically, Dark Flash is like, "What was that about, Piper? I thought you were one of the good guys." And he's like, "I had to draw you out, Wally. You haven't checked in with me. I don't know if you remember, but we used to be friends." Basically, there's this guy named Replicant who has all the abilities of the rogues, and he's hunting down rogues and killing them. And because I used to be a rogue, he's going to come after me. So I was wondering if you could maybe help me, especially because you fought him in the past. And as they're talking, Replicant shows up and is like, "Ah, good. And here I was afraid I'd have to hunt you down." He goes to kill Pied Piper. He's like, "I wonder what it's going to be like killing you with your own weapon." And that's when Dark Flash punches through his chest. And Replicant is just like, "That hurt!" He uses his powers against Dark Flash. And so Dark Flash grabs Piper and escapes the building before it can crumble down, because Replicant brings the building falling on top of them with his new sound powers. Dark Flash and Pied Piper decide to head to the Trickster's hideout, because the Trickster hides a stash of rogues' weapons there, and they know for a fact that Replicant is going to try and find the weapons and absorb them. But when they get there, Dark Flash is like, "Have you got a plan B?" And Pied Piper's just like, "What do you mean?" And it's because Replicant is already there, and he's already absorbed all of the Trickster's weapons, and he's also knocked the Trickster unconscious. Meanwhile, Wally, who is at the mercy of Psycho Wally, tries to talk Psycho Wally down by saying that, trying to explain who he is, that he is a good guy and that he comes from the same timeline as Linda, and that they got married, and that he would never become the man that Psycho Wally did. And Psycho is just like, how do you know you wouldn't become like me? And that's when we learn a little bit more about Psycho Wally. Another major difference in this timeline: when Psycho Wally fought Savitar, unlike regular Wally, who refused to be taught by Savitar, Psycho Wally decided to learn all of Savitar's secrets, and then he killed Savitar after Savitar taught him them all. He killed Savitar, and then, that's what kind of begun his descent into darkness. And Linda is just like, my Wally would never do that. Like, I would never be with him if he killed Savitar. And, she's like, are you really that insane? And he's just like, I love you. And Wally's just like, Walter, don't hurt her. And as he tries to reach out towards Walter, a glass, basically two giant glass jars form around Walter and Wally. I guess I can call him Walter now because that's his name. So you got Walter and Wally. Walter's the psycho, Wally's the regular one. So giant glass domes appear around Walter and Wally. And Linda is just like, oh no, it's him, the man who kidnapped me. He's found us, Wally. You have to get out of there before. And suddenly a bunch of gag goes over her mouth and around her arms. And Abracadabra shows up. He's like, don't spoil it, dear. You know how I like to make an entrance. And they're just like, Cadabra! And so, big reveal. Abracadabra was the one who stole Linda all along. And of course he did. You know, he's kind of become one of Wally's arch nemesis, thanks to Mark Waid. But I love Abracadabra, and I can't wait to see what happens next. And we'll find out what happens next in issue 156. 3 Ways for the Flash to Die. Big revelations in issue 156 as we learn the true origins of the future Wally West, the one who came from, who's 10 years older, the Dark Flash. We learn his origin in this, and we also get to see the confrontation between Abracadabra, Walter West, and present-day Wally West as they try to save Linda Park from the clutches of Abracadabra. Kadabra has done all of this because he wants to get rid of the Flash forever, and he knows that Linda Park is Wally's anchor. So if he takes away Linda, then Wally can't get back. And that's why he took Linda away, because he knew that if he took her away, Wally would be stuck in the Speed Force again. But because Linda has escaped, Wally is back. And that has pissed Abracadabra off. So now he is going to do whatever he can to kill Linda so that Wally will go away, probably. Or so he can then kill the Flash afterward as well. So he traps Wally and Walter in separate traps. And Wally can't escape from his, because if he tries to vibrate out of it, it will explode and take out half the block. But Walter has learnt a lot more about speed than Wally has, and he can vibrate out of things just fine, which he does. He vibrates out of his trap and goes straight for Kadabra, and when he runs through Kadabra, Kadabra turns into a bunch of snakes and is like, haven't you, you're so stupid for trying to attack a magician. You should never, believe everything you see. So Wally decides that he can't vibrate out of these metal tentacles that are surrounding him, so instead he spins himself around like a tornado and smashes into a fire hydrant, which explodes, freeing him from the metal tentacles. He then breaks Linda out of the like death trap box that she's currently stuck in and grabs her and takes her away to safety. But then he tells her that he needs to try and save Walter because Walter is currently bloodthirsty for Kadabra, and if Wally doesn't stop him, Walter might end up killing himself out of stupidity. So he goes to try and help Walter defeat Kadabra and help calm him down. Meanwhile, Piper and Dark Flash are facing Replicant. So they fight Replicant, but Replicant proves to be incredibly powerful. However, he decides to put the fight on hold, and Replicant is like, you know what? I'm not going to kill you right now because I have a better plan. And he heads off. And Dark Flash is like, where do you think he went? And Piper doesn't even answer him and is basically like, so you're Wally West. Like, why are you like this? And Wally is like, I can't tell you that, and you better not tell anybody else. See ya, I'm off to go find Angela, the love of my life. So he heads off to find Angela, and he takes her to Venice, where he proposes to her. He brings out his ring, and he asks Angela to marry him, and she's like, heck yeah! And as they kiss, it turns out that the ferryman behind them is actually Replicant in disguise. It's obvious that he's come back to find Angela and kill her, because that's what Flash rogues do, you know? They try to kill the Flash's fiancés. I'm assuming that he's inspired by a Reverse Flash, and that's what he's trying to do. Meanwhile, Walter and Wally continue their fight against Kadabra, with Wally trying to make sure that Linda stays safe because Kadabra keeps trying to kill her, while Walter attacks Kadabra. And Wally decides to make a last-minute decision that is incredibly insane. But he just decides to try it out because why not? Basically, Wally and Walter both vibrate at different frequencies. So Wally assumes that if he vibrates and Walter vibrates, they can vibrate into each other and become one being for a very short period of time, and Wally can gain control of Walter's body, and that will help them defeat Kadabra. And you know what? It works. Against all the odds, Wally vibrates into Walter's body and manages to fuse with his body, and he takes over Walter's body and then begins fighting Kadabra, and they both kind of control the body and its powers. So, like, Kadabra throws a bunch of explosive eggs, and when they explode, Walter sucks all the speed out of them, stopping the bombs from exploding. And then Wally manages to use his goodwill to fight Kadabra and not try and kill him like Walter was. But he almost, for a certain period of time, he does start to think about killing Kadabra, but then he's like, no, I gotta keep my head on straight and make sure I don't give in to Walter's control. And, I don't want to give in to killing Kadabra. Kadabra grabs Linda, and he's basically like, I've had enough. I'm just gonna redo the spell where everyone forgets who Linda is. You're never gonna see him again. And before he can cast it, Wally tries to get him. Wally and Walter are fused together. They try to get Kadabra, and Kadabra's like, nope. And he opens up a big hole in the floor and sends the Flash falling into it. But the Flash just blasts himself back out amongst a bunch of flames. It's assumed that, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on, but Kadabra, it seems to me like Kadabra sends them falling into a pit and then attempts to roast them by creating a pillar of fire that shoots out of the pit with the Flash in it. But the Flash manages to vibrate and not get killed by the flames. And then he's like, I will never forget her! And Wally just punches Kadabra in the face. And then the two Flashes separate, Walter and Wally. And then Walter goes to kill Kadabra, and then he doesn't. because, having fused with Wally, Walter has become a better person. He's still a little edgy, but he no longer has the need to kill anymore. So, Wally and Linda reunite again, and Linda actually walks over to Walter and is like, you miss her, and it's clear to me that you've changed as a person. So, while you never would have met Linda back then, now that you've changed, like, she would definitely have wanted to be with you, and she definitely would have loved you. So it's kind of like a little nice moment for Walter. So as Linda and Wally prepare to head back to their own time, suddenly, Walter is looking at Kadabra's body, and he finds that Kadabra has been replaced by a dummy with a note on it that says, "So you'll never forget her, eh?" And then Kadabra gets up and he's like, "Good," and he claps his hands, and a big pillar of light comes down and vaporizes Wally and Linda. Wally and Linda are dead, and Walter watches in horror as their bodies are destroyed. He's like, "I thought you were down. I stopped the fight. It's my fault. This was my fault. My God!" He gets hit by a bunch of lightning from Kadabra, and Kadabra is just like, "You can't stop me. I'll kill you." And Walter West is like, "Well, you don't know that I'm powerful enough to accelerate my metabolism and my cells." And so Walter, in that moment, ages himself by about 10 years. And then goes to attack Kadabra, and he's like, "Go ahead, strike! And Kadabra just strikes Walter multiple times. He strikes him in the face, and Walter gets a lightning bolt scar under his on his eye, and he continues striking Walter, and Walter continuously loses and regrows his hair repeatedly, and Kadabra just continuously strikes him until Walter just keeps getting up, and Kadabra is like, "Alright, it's clear I can't kill you. You've really pissed me off, but also I don't want to die, so I'm going to get out of here, and when I recollect myself, get a little bit stronger, I'll come back and I'll kill you." And Walter is like, "You think you can escape? You will not escape me. You forget, Kadabra. I know Wally now. Thanks to his final stunt, I now share some of his memories. I know where and when he comes from, where you both call home, and how to get there. And for all you cost Wally and me both, I will hunt you across space, across time, to make you pay for what you've done, if it's the last thing I do." And we see Walter head to Wally's timeline, where he dumps his Flash costume and puts on a familiar dark and silver Flash costume. That's right. The Walter West that we've been seeing, the Psycho Wally that we've been seeing in this other timeline, is the Dark Flash. They are one and the same. And that's where that issue ends, and we'll find out what happens next in issue 157. So, issue 157 begins where the previous issue left off, with Walter West getting married to Angela. But it turns out the replicant was right there, and so he shows up and is like, "Hey, I'm gonna try and screw up your life." Because he's not there to kill Angela. He's there to... Well, he's not there to kill Flash. He is there to kill Angela. He's not there to kill Flash. He's there to ruin the Flash's life. Basically, he just wants to do whatever he can to make Walter's life a living hell for what he did to Boomerang. So, using his abilities from Dr. Alchemy, he turns the air into chloroform, which causes Dark Flash to pass out. And when Walter awakens, he's like, "Where's Angela? Like, what did you do with her?" And he's just like, "She just went for a swim in the frozen lake," and reveals that the lake beneath them is completely frozen, So Walter immediately jumps in, and we see that Angela is underneath, like trying to get out. She's drowning. He jumps in to save her, and Replicant is like, you see, like, I'm not trying to kill you, I'm just trying to ruin your life because I know if I push you hard enough, you'll eventually go insane. And that's what I want. And Walter's looking around and he's like, you're looking for Angela? I think she's over there amongst all those copies. And Walter turns to see a bunch of copies of Angela and he doesn't know which one's the real one. Meanwhile, Jay has been instructing Piper to build something. He won't say what it is, but he needs Piper's help to build something to help the Dark Flash. And he says to Piper, he's like, I haven't been able to tell anyone who the Dark Flash is, even the people who deserve to know. I haven't even told them what's happened to Linda. I just need you to trust me, build this thing, so that we can save Dark Flash's life, and everyone. Dark Flash continues trying to save Angela, and he manages to do so. He basically grabs her and uses his speed to shoot himself out of the frozen lake, freeing Angela. But then Replicant sets the waters around them on fire and tries to like because what Dark Flash tries to do is he tries to shoot a torrent of water at Replicant, and Replicant just uses his powers to combat Dark Flash's abilities. And some of the fire manages to get on Dark Flash's mask, and his mask burns off. And Abracadabra is watching this whole battle play out, and that's when he discovers that the Dark Flash in the present is the Walter West that he met in the other timeline. So now he knows that Dark Flash is Walter West, and that he's probably coming after him. And as he makes this realization, he uses his powers to teleport Replicant out as... Because what Dark Flash does is Replicant shoots a giant fireball at him, and Dark Flash uses his abilities to infuse the fireball with speed and send it flying back at Replicant. But before it can hit Replicant is teleported out by Kadabra. And Walter makes a note. He's like, Angela's like, you got him. Like, we're all good now. And Walter's like, he looked surprised. Like, where did he go? And she's like, I don't care about that. I care about you. Let me tend to these burns. And we find out Replicant has been taken to Kadabra's base, where he basically wants Replicant's help to kill the Flash because they both know... Or, no, not kill the Flash. Kadabra wants what Replicant wants. To push the Flash so hard that and ruin his life so badly that the Flash tips over the scales and goes insane. Meanwhile, Max, Jessie, and Bart all meet up with Jay, and Jay basically says to them that they need to trust him because they need to trust him, and they need to trust Dark Flash, and they need to help the Dark Flash. And they're just like, why? Why should we help him? And Jay's like, because I know more about him than you do, but I also can't tell you the truth, unfortunately. But just trust me, like, we need this. Also, I forgot to mention, but earlier on, when Pied Piper was telling Jay, like, asking Jay, like, why don't you trust me to tell you why you need this, like, to tell me why you need this machine, he tries to insinuate that, like, he's like, Jay, like, are you a bigot? Like, do you not trust me just because, like, I'm a gay man? And Jay doesn't even say no. He's just like, as long as you're a friend of Wally's, that's all that matters to me. And it's like, is Jay a bigot? I don't think so. I don't think he is. I don't think he's homophobic. I think Jay was just being a bit of an idiot, not answering properly. Bart, again, comes to the conclusion, you know, he's like, you know, and Jessie shakes my head to see if anything's loose, and Max is just like, Bart, who are you talking about? Wait, let us guess. And they're like, Linda. And he's like talking about Linda again. And he's like, what? You remember? Like, you remember her? yeah, you remember her. And then Max is just like, Linda's Impulse's imaginary friend. And Bart is like, you still not believing me that Linda is a real person? You know, and then he explains to them what happened to her, about how, like, Kadabra played a trick on her. The whole world thinks she disappeared before she ever met Wally and us. And they just drag him away. And Bart is just like, I'm never gonna forget you, Linda. Like, I know you exist. I know you're real. Like, I won't forget you. And Linda, in spirit, is there. And she's like, thank you. And is, like, crying. It's a pretty heartwarming moment seeing Bart be the only person who remembers Linda. And it's pretty heartbreaking seeing Jessie and Max and Jay just be like, oh, you're lying. Like, you're just talking about your stupid imaginary friend. Kadabra decides to teach Replicant everything that we already know. He basically just tells Replicant everything that's happened up to this point with Linda and Wally and Walter. And then Walter, at the same time, is revealing everything to Angela. He's basically like, the reason I was pretending to be Wally was so that everyone would trust me. And that's why I stole all of his journals and Barry's journals, because I wanted to learn as much about him as I could so that I could replace him, so that people would think I'm him, because obviously I didn't want anyone knowing that Wally was gone, and it was all part of the plan to try and stop Kadabra and all that. And he's just like, I care about you, Angela, and I hope that this doesn't change anything between us. And Angela's like, of course not. I know you're the man I love. And so Replicant is like, whoa, slow down. Look, no pun intended, but this is a lot to absorb. You're right, we both want Flash dead for Boomerang and for how he messed with you, so what's your plan? And before Kadabra can say anything, he gets blasted, and a mysterious figure comes into the room and is like, doesn't matter. He's no longer headlining this little production. I am. And Professor Zoom shows up. Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne, shows up and is basically like, I'm stealing the show. I'm the main villain now. He's like, look at this. Look at this thing I've got on my wrist. It's called a neuron gauntlet. Wait until you see what it does to the Flashes. Basically, I don't get, like what Zoom does is he shows up and he's basically like, why are you going after this Angela chick and not after the Flash's allies? We should be going after them. We should be killing them. She's useless. She's not gonna get in our way. And Kadabra is just like, you don't understand. Like, if we kill her, he'll go insane. And Zoom is like, I don't care. We're doing things my way. We're going after his friends. And so it's, yeah, kind of like insane. I know it's out of nowhere, but at the same time, it makes so much sense that Eobard Thawne would show up out of nowhere and be like, I'm stealing the show. I'm the main villain now. You know, this is my thing. And maybe we'll get a bit of an explanation about how, you know, Zoom figured all this stuff out and showed up. So Max goes looking for Dark Flash, and he finds Bart has been turned into a puppet, and he's like, Impulse! And he goes to grab the puppet, and the puppet turns into a bunch of like goo and wraps around Max and turns into stone, trapping him in place. And that's when Replicant and Kadabra show up, and he's like, Kadabra, Replicant, 2 against 1? And Zoom is like, you wish. My, that's some seizure. Speed energy redirected from your muscles into your nervous system, playing havoc with your synapses and internal organs. I can't imagine the pain. And so he uses this glove that he revealed in the previous page to, redirect the speed in Max's body to his brain and give him a seizure. And so Kadabra is basically just like, you're right, Zoom. Like, get rid of the other speedsters first. There's no cavalry in place for that Angela kid. Or frankly, for anybody in this hick town. And Max is just like, dream on, Jessie, Impulse, the others will stop you. And Replicant is like, gee, you think? And it's revealed behind Replicant that they've already captured Jessie, Bart, and Jay. And we'll find out what happens next in issue 158. when the Flashes attempt to stop Kadabra and Zoom and Replicant. Will they be able to do so? We're about to find out. So issue 159 continues from where the last issue ends, obviously, with Professor Zoom, Kadabra, and Replicant having captured all of Flash's friends, and Kadabra preparing to just kill Dark Flash, or at least that's what Zoom and Replicant believe. But then Kadabra is like, alright, now that we've gotten all of his friends out of the way, let's go after Angela. And Zoom is like, no! Like, why are you a magician who just keeps playing their old tricks? You already took down that Linda chick. Screw Angela, let's just go after the Flash. And Kadabra is like, I've already killed Wally West, Zoom. Don't presume I have much patience when it comes to you. This new Flash, Walter West, caused me inordinate pain on the parallel world he once called home. Here's a taste of the suffering he'll endure in kind, you. And he, uses his magic to, start turning Zoom's body into worms. And Replicant transforms Kadabra's hands into ball and chains. And he's like, whoa, we all want our shot at Flash, man. We're in this together. Let's keep it together. I'm with Zoom. Enough toying with Flash. We got Zoom's little neurozap gun. Let's put it to the test. So they lure Dark Flash to a nearby theater by creating a huge wall of ice around it, which Dark Flash immediately sees as a sign of Replicant. And he runs through the wall of ice, but he doesn't know that it's absolute zero. So running through a wall of ice at absolute zero causes his body to seize up in pain. It's incredibly shocking. And then immediately after that, Replicant blasts Dark Flash with a ton of fire. But Dark Flash being OP as hell, it doesn't really do anything to him, and he comes full charge at Replicant and Kadabra. Kadabra creates a portal in front of Dark Flash for him to be sent into, and then Replicant absorbs the portal, absorbs the portal into his body, and with Dark Flash alongside it. So Dark Flash is absorbed into Replicant's body. But then immediately, Dark Flash vibrates his way out of Replicant's body, and Zoom then yanks him out and is like, since neither of you can kill him in fancy ways, let's just kill him the old-fashioned way, and puts his arm around Dark Flash's neck and starts choking him out. Kadabra basically says to to Dark Flash, he's like, this is the moment I've been waiting for. The moment that I can finally make you suffer. I'm going to take your beautiful girlfriend Angela from you, just like I took Linda. And Dark Flash is like, who? And this breaks Kadabra. He's like, what do you mean, who? And Zoom is like, well, you got rid of Linda and you made everyone forget about her, which means that, nobody cares about what you did, because nobody even remembers Linda. Nobody cares that you killed her, because nobody even knows she exists. And this breaks Kadabra to the point where he's like, I can't fathom the idea of nobody remembering what I did because nobody remembers Linda. So I'm going to bring her back and make sure everyone remembers. And he brings back Linda just to show everyone. Basically, he brings back Linda just so he can try and kill her again. And so he brings Linda back, and Zoom pulls off his mask and reveals himself to actually be Wally West, who was disguised as Zoom the entire time. It's like, that's the problem with thinking you're the only one with a trick up his sleeve, Kadabra. You've never been right yet. Kadabra's like, you're alive? And Replicant's like, not for long once I get my hands on this. And he tries to go for, the glove that Wally was wearing that could cause seizures and speedsters. But he gets blasted by a nanovirus. And the nanovirus is what Pied Piper was making that whole time. So Jay has used the nanovirus against Replicant to cause his body to seize up and allow Dark Flash to free everyone from their little like their seizures that they've been put into. Like they're able to turn off the gloves, so now no one is suffering from any seizures except for Replicant, and they're all free. And now they can all fight against Kadabra. But Kadabra has created a barrier around himself that Dark Flash and Wally can't break through. And he's trying to create the biggest spell he's ever created so far. And Linda's like, maybe the way to combat his magic is with mirrors. And she opens up a curtain and there's like a bunch of mirrors because they're in Kadabra's place and he's a magician, so he always has mirrors somewhere. The spell that Kadabra is trying to create is a spell that will make everyone cease to exist. Basically, everyone will forget who everyone is. When he sets off the spell, the flashes, like everyone in the room, holds up their mirrors, and the mirrors reflect the spell back onto Kadabra, and he forgets who he is. Kadabra gets complete amnesia, and Dark Flash is like, oh wow, that's karma, the ultimate egotist, forgotten by his best audience. And while he's like, look in his eyes, he's run out of tricks. Grab what's left of Replicant and let's find them both a couple of prison doctors. And then Wally and friends, after beating Kadabra and Replicant, head back to Angela's office, and Wally reveals everything. So back when Walter thought that he and Linda had died, it turns out that Wally had vibrated at just the last second to get away from the beam. But because they were half vibrated, they ended up accidentally vibrating into another dimension and they couldn't get out. And they became wraiths that were just traveling through the multiverse, trying to find an Earth to lock onto, an Earth that remembers them. They finally find their own Earth that they believe is theirs, but then they see that Jay and Max and Jessie don't remember them, which causes a lot of distress. But then they find that Bart still remembers them. So Bart remembering them was incredibly important because it allowed them a tether to that world. So Wally has the ability to vibrate back into that Earth because of his powers, but unfortunately he can't bring Linda with him, so he gets to get his body back, but Linda has to remain a wraith at his side. And nobody remembers her, but they remember him. And then, Wally comes up with the plan to create the nanovirus to go against Replicant. So he goes to Jay and he tells him about the nanovirus, and that's how Jay came up with that plan. And then he decides to disguise himself as Zoom and get in with Kadabra and Replicant, and we know the rest of the story after that. But yeah, that's basically how everything happened. And Angela tries to leave and is like, now that Linda's back, I'm sure the three of you have stuff that you need to talk about. And Walter is like, I don't care about Linda anymore, Angela. I care about you. I've asked you before and I'll ask you again. Angela Margolin, will you marry me? And as he's about to put the ring on her finger, a lasso whips around Walter's hand and is like, no. And it's Superman and Wonder Woman. And Superman is like, not if we can help it. And we end on that cliffhanger. As it appears that Superman and Wonder Woman have a bit of a grudge against Dark Flash. And if you've read JLA, which I have, you would know that in JLA, Dark Flash showed up briefly as a member of the JLA for a very brief moment, and none of them trusted him, and so I'm pretty sure this is like continuing on from that, where they want answers as to who this Dark Flash is, and we'll find out how this situation concludes in the next issue, the final issue of the Dark Flash saga, issue 159, To Hyper Time and Beyond. So issue 159, Superman and Wonder Woman have come to force Walter West to go back to his own time. And the reason why is because they've learnt from a previous series called The Kingdom, which we're not reading. It's a spin-off of... it's like a sequel/prequel to Kingdom Come, that whenever a person from another timeline is in a different timeline, if they stay there for too long, the two continuities can start crashing and things will start changing and worlds will collide and reality will be warped. And it already starts happening when Wonder Woman sees another version of Jay standing behind Jay. And so she's like, it's already starting. I'm sorry, Walter, but you've got to go. And Angela can't come with you because Angela isn't from your world. And if she goes to your world, she'll probably destroy your world the same way that you're destroying this one. And Walter is like, I can't go now. Just give me some time. And Superman says, you got 6 hours, and then you have to leave. That's all you got. And so with those 6 hours, Walter decides to take Angela to Rome because she always said that she wanted to go to Rome and to be married. And so he takes her there to have like their own little ceremony and goodbye before he eventually has to leave. It's kind of cool because like reality is distorting, and so there's one panel where Superman looks like Ultraman and Jesse thinks that he's Ultraman, and Wally is like, no, that's just Superman, Jesse. Reality's warping, so you just think it's Ultraman. And so Superman and Wonder Woman leave, and Walter and Angela decide to head off to, spend their last 6 hours together. And then Bart is like, wow, we almost forgot. Wally and Linda were in the middle of getting married when this whole thing started. Where do we pick up? And Max is just like, Bart, now is not the time for it. And Wally's like, no, Bart's right. We got to get married. Come on, let's go. And Linda's just like, sure, why not? But what about the caterers, guests, the license, grandma's farm? And Wally's like, we're speedsters. We'll get it done. We can get that all done lickety-split. And so they start setting up the Wally and Linda's wedding so that they can get married for real this time. Walter and Angela head to Rome and spend their final moments together. Well, Walter basically just says to her that, like, he grew up in an incredibly abusive household, and because of that, he always found it very hard to get close to anyone or really fall in love with anyone, because most of the time falling in love was just to bolster himself up because of how shitty he felt throughout his life. Very few people he ever met he truly loved, especially women. The women he's loved most in his life are Iris, Linda, and Angela. And so, yeah, this is very emotional for Angela, and her and Walter embrace each other. And Walter, as much as he wants to take Angela away, he says to Angela, because Angela points out the fact that Walter said, like, I remembered that you wanted to go to Rome to get married for now. And she's like, why did you say for now? And Walter is like, because once I leave, we're probably going to forget each other. So eventually I will forget about this, about Rome. And Angela's just like, oh my god, like, I can't believe that. I don't want to forget you. Meanwhile, Linda and Wally is helping set up the wedding, and Linda is kind of getting pissed off at Wally because he's getting in the way of the caterers, and caterers just like, I'm just trying to save everybody some time. And he almost knocks over a nearby cake, but then he steals the speed from the cake, allowing the caterers to stop it from hitting the ground. And Wally's like, what just happened? And Linda was like, you stole the speed from the cake. Normally you can't do that, but maybe because you fused with Walter's body for a little bit, maybe you can steal speed from cakes. Like, from stuff. Like, like Walter can. And Wally's like, huh, alright. If that's the case, he then kicks it into overdrive even more, and Linda's just like, I appreciate the attention, but shouldn't we at least postpone until we can get in touch with your mother or your father? And he's like, I'll send them a wedding album. He's like, what makes you think the photographer will be able to capture you? Wally, what has gotten into you? And then Superman and the JLA and the Titans all show up, and Superman is like, look, the wedding, like, superhero weddings are known for having villains come and crash them. And that's why Wally has invited us, not just to be guests, but to be guards. But Linda's like, no, that can't be it. Like, that's not it. There's something more to this. Something else is going on. You know, I never thought a love like this was possible. I never want to be without Wally again. I feel so close to him. Normally. And Walter realizes that his time with Angela is running out because reality around them is getting worse and people are starting to get in danger. Like a car from another reality appears in front of another car and almost sends the car colliding off the road. And so Walter is like, I've got to go. I'm sorry, Angela, but I love you. I will always love you, and I'll try to remember you for as long as I can. And so Linda and Wally prepared to get married, and as the officiant is giving his speech, Linda notices that Wally is tapping his foot, and he's like, if anyone can show a reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your... And before he can finish his sentence, Linda says, hold the phone. And Wally's just like, Linda, what are you doing? There's people around here. Like, why are you doing this? She's like, relax. You know, I'm still gonna marry you. But first of all, I want to know, why are you being so pushy with this? Like, why are you being so, like, impatient? Why are we doing this right now? There has to be a reason. There has to be. Like, it's Walter, isn't it? Walter and Angela. Like, he really spooked you, didn't he? And Wally is like, well, you saw him. You saw Walter in the other timeline. He went insane when he lost his Linda. And I don't want to end up like him. You know, and especially because when Wally saw that he was getting the same powers as Walter now, that made him think that he was becoming more like Walter. And he's like, I don't want to become like Walter. And Linda's like, I get it now. So you think that the further you pull, like, the further the gap between you and Walter there is, the less likely you'll become like him. That's the only reason you're marrying me, is because Walter didn't get married to his Linda. And Wally's like, wait, no, like, you don't get it. Like, I'm not marrying you just for that. Like, it's not just for me. I'm not doing it just for selfish reasons. He's like, you're absolutely right. Like, that probably was worrying me, but you were also right the first time. I can't wait to be married to you. I tasted life without you, and I will not go through that again. Everything you know about having fun, you learned from me. Everything I know about being a grown-up, I learned from you, Linda. I cannot wait to see what we teach each other over the next 60 years. I have no other wish than to devote the rest of my life to knowing you. And immediately after he says that, Linda is like, all right, let's get this marriage on, all right? I do. I said my vow. Like, I do. Let's get this over with. And the officiant is like, I now pronounce you husband and wife. And Wally and Linda kiss and officially become husband and wife. And at the same time, Walter and Angela kiss, only they're crying because they're kissing for the last time. And Walter, crying, begins running in order to travel back to his own time. And while he's traveling back to his world, everyone is celebrating Wally and Linda having just got married. And Walter gives a little speech. He's like, I run faster than I've ever run before. I want every footfall to take me a step further away from the egg. It doesn't. I want to believe we'll be together someday. I will not forget. But will she? I can hope not. I can pray. But I'll never know for sure. And suddenly, there's quite a bit I don't know for sure. And he ends up in a city, and he's like, And they're like, what the heck? What's with the costume? Hey, pal, a little early for Halloween. And Walter is just like, this isn't Central City. And they're like, what do you mean? Like Midtown? This is Kansas City. You're not from around here. I don't think so. And a guy from a local comic book shop is like, Central City? Oh, you must be a comic book fan. Hey, come in. And they introduce Walter to this comic book store, and the reveal is that Walter has ended up in another Earth, which is supposed to be a reflection of our Earth, where like Marvel and DC exist, comic books exist, you know, characters like Wally West and stuff, they're all in comic books. And Walter finds a comic book, this very issue that I am currently reading, he finds in the store, and he flicks through it, and he finds a page with Angela on it that says, I remember you, Walter. I'll always remember. And with a smile, Walter, now knowing that Angela does remember him, leaves the comic book store, and where does he go? I don't know. And I don't know if we'll ever find out, because this is supposed to kind of be like a bit of an ending for Walter. I'm sure somebody, like a later writer, may return to Dark Flash so we can see, you know, what happens to Walter next. But for now, that's the end of Walter's story, and that's the end of the Dark Flash saga. Wally and Linda are now married, but that's not the end of this episode, because we've got a couple more issues to get through. First of all, we got issue 160, which is Wally and Linda's Honeymoon, which is written by Brian Augustine, with art by Scott Collins. First ever issue drawn by Scott Collins. If you don't know Scott Collins, he's probably one of the most famous Flash artists of all time. He will eventually become known as being the main Flash artist for Jeff Johns' run. So yeah, the art is by Scott Collins and John Holdredge. So the first thing I notice upon starting issue 160 is that Brian Augustine is writing this by himself, and he is incredibly horny when writing Wally and Linda and their relationship. Obviously this issue was all about them going on their honeymoon, and multiple times there's quite a few sex jokes in this. In fact, there's a running gag in this issue where Wally keeps mentioning that Linda has like a black lace G-string and he wants her to wear it, and like she's gonna wear it, and he constantly brings it up, and it's even brought up at the very end as well. There's some other stuff that I'll point out a little bit later. But for now, all we need to know is that Linda and Wally got married in the last issue, and in this issue, they're going on their honeymoon, and because Wally is a superhero, of course it's on the news, and somebody is watching the news and is incredibly upset, and it seems like they're obsessed with the Flash. They got like portraits of the Flash throughout their house, and so they're upset at seeing Wally getting married to Linda, and they just blast their TV to smithereens. So right away we know that some supervillain, somebody is going to probably try and ruin the honeymoon. So Wally takes Linda to Paris, and there's actually a little camera that's following them, watching them. And while they're in Paris, a giant blimp ship shows up. It's hard to explain what it is. It's a big blimp with lasers, and it starts shooting lasers at them, and Wally's like, damn, can't have a honeymoon without villains attacking when you're a superhero. So what Wally does is he grabs a couple of stones from a nearby pot, and he throws the stones at the blimp, puncturing the fuel tanks. And as the ship starts to slowly fall from the sky, it suddenly explodes. And Wally's like, crap, did I do that? Oh wait, no, it actually blew, like they blew themselves up. Like that's crazy. And then later on, Wally mentions that they didn't find any bodies in the explosion, so either they got a quick getaway or they were vaporized by the explosion. So because their honeymoon in Paris was ruined, they have to find a new place to have their honeymoon. So they go and see this girl named Becky at Whirlwind Tours travel agency. She knows that Wally is the Flash, and she gets a little bit scared because she thinks Wally thinks that she's told people about his identity. And he's like, nah, of course not, Becky. Like, I don't suspect you at all. Obviously, Becky is supposed to be a red herring throughout this whole thing of like, oh, Becky was responsible for all of these attacks. But you'll see. At the moment, it's kind of like, it's a little bit too obvious. Because Becky very clearly has a crush on Wally. Linda even points this out. And also, every single place that Becky sends them to, they always get attacked. She sends them to, I'm assuming it's Hawaii. Like, they don't say the names of the places, I guess, to avoid people complaining that the place isn't accurate. So they get sent to a tropical island, and a big submarine shows up that looks like a fish. Or I guess it's supposed to be, yeah, it kind of looks like a fish. And then, like, these guys with, like, rubber frog suits start coming out of it, and they're all riding on little boats with harpoon guns. I'm not making this up. This is what happens. They all start coming out. Wally makes a rubber fetish joke. He's like, some Jules Verne design sense must be the party pooper from Paris. Your mum's not behind this, is she? Nope, mum doesn't know this many guys with rubber fetishes. This is going to be a problem. So it's kind of weird for Wally to make a joke like that about his mum and be like, oh yeah, my mum, like, knows some guys with rubber fetishes, but she doesn't know this many. Like, alright, Brian, calm down. So, Wally deals with them. He runs over to them as they're shooting harpoons and literally turns the tides against them by running through the tides and using his speed to change the direction of the tides, which smashes into their giant fish and sends all of these, like, minion guys, like, falling into the ocean. And then the fish explodes because whoever is ordering these guys to go after Wally and Linda likes to blow up their stuff. They're a little bit outgoing when it comes to punishing failure. So after that, they go to some snowy place, probably like Sweden or something, and they've gone there to do some fishing, and as they're about to go fishing, a giant water snake robot comes out of the ground and tries to kill them. And so Wally gets the other civilians to safety, and then he grabs Linda, and they get out of there. They actually end up getting eaten by the giant robot snake. They start running away from it, and the giant robot snake lunges into them, opens up its mouth, and eats them. And then while they're inside it, a bunch of gas comes out and knocks them out. And that's when we get the big reveal that the one behind this whole thing was Cobra. Now, the reason why Cobra is doing this isn't because of his hatred of Wally, it's because of his hatred of Linda. Because as we get revealed in this issue by Brian Augustine, Cobra is just a massive misogynist. He has no problem with the fact that Wally beat him. He's just kind of like, yeah, Wally beat me, that's fine. Like, I'll just pick myself up and I'll fight him again one day. But Linda beating me, that's a problem because she's a woman. And a woman is not allowed to beat a man. Women are supposed to be like nurses and stuff and not fighters. So the fact that she beat me was humiliating and she should be punished for being a strong woman. And so he locks Linda in a tank and starts filling it with snakes, and he traps Wally in these snake-looking... They're like... How can I explain it? They're basically like these little robot snakes that are wrapped around different parts of his body, constraining him, like restraining him. And so Wally helplessly watches as these snakes start filling the tank, but he manages to get out of these snakes that are restraining him by just trying really hard. Like, that's it, really. Like, he tries really hard. He uses his speed really hard. He speeds so hard that he gets out of them, and then beats the crap out of all of Cobra's men, and then um what he does is he runs up behind Cobra, and he grabs Cobra from the back, and he uses Cobra to smash open the like the containment tube that Linda is in. And so Wally is able to pull Linda out to safety, and Cobra is swarmed in all of the snakes. Like, all of the snakes that were attacking Linda pile all over him, and Linda's like, alright, you better grab Cobra before there's nothing left of him to hand to the authorities. So Wally saves Cobra, stops him from being killed, and then they decide to head back to the travel agency to see Becky, mainly to give her an apology because they were starting to suspect that it was her behind this. And when they enter the travel agency, the whole place has been torn apart. And Linda's like, oh, maybe she threw a giant fit because of her crush over you. And Wally's like, that's enough joking. It seems like Becky might actually be in danger. And they hear Becky crying out for help from a nearby alleyway. So Linda and Wally go out to see where the crying's come from. And that's when we get the big reveal that Becky isn't Becky after all. And it's actually Christine, the Lady Flash. Remember Lady Flash? She used to be a member of the... I can't remember the name of them, but, like, there was Red Trinity, and then there was the, like, evil versions of them that were made by the Russians. She was a member of them, and then she redeemed herself and, like, became a Flash and became Lady Flash, but then she got, like, she became bitter of Wally and his treatment of her and not treating her like a real hero, so she joined Savitar and became his understudy, and ever since then she's just been insane. And she's obsessed with Wally. She's in love with him, and she wants to be with him, and she wants to kill Linda, and so that's why she did this. She said that Cobra promised that he would kill Linda, and she's really pissed off that he didn't meet the end of the bargain. And so now, she's going to do his job for him and try and kill Linda. So she runs up to Linda to try and kill her, and Wally displays his new ability to steal speed. He just steals all of Lady Flash's speed. So Lady Flash isn't a speedster anymore. She has no speed left. So that's her written out of the Flash forever. There's no reason for her to ever show up again, you know? She's going to be put into prison or something. She has no speed powers left. This is essentially Brian Augustine finally nailing the nail, like hammering the nail into the coffin of Lady Flash, where, like, she is dead as a character. Because, you know, Mark Waid took a character who was complicated and was genuinely becoming redeemed, and then flushed that all down the toilet, made her into a crazy, insane woman, and then Brian Augustine finally put an end to it and was just like, alright, that character's gone now. Am I upset? I mean, you can probably tell. I liked Christine a lot. I liked the development that she went through in William Mesner-Loeb's run, and it's really sad to see that this is what it came to. Like, this is what it had to come to. Like, you'd never want that for a character. You know, this is just as bad as what happened to Maxwell Lord. So after that fiasco, Wally and Linda finally get to go on their real honeymoon on some unknown beach somewhere, where they have a nice suntan, and Wally once again asks Linda about the black G-string, and Linda's like, oh no, I forgot it. Do you want to go back? Do you want to quickly dash and get it? And the end. That's where it ends. It ends on the G-string joke. overall, pretty good issue. I think it's very clear that when Mark Waid isn't there, nobody is stopping Brian Augustine from getting a little bit too thirsty while writing. Um, yeah, some of the jokes are a little bit too on the nose. I think it got to a point where it's like, all right, yes, they're a newly married couple. Yes, it's very common for people when they're newly married to be like super horny, but like not that much. But anyway, that's enough of that issue. On to the next issue, which is issue 161. This is actually a special issue because right now we're doing a couple of filler issues between the Mark Waid and Jeff Johns run. After this one is actually Mark Waid's final issue, which is 162. So because of that, we're getting a couple of filler stories. And this one is a flashback story for Jay Garrick called Honeymoon in Vegas, written by Pat McGreal, with art by Paul Pelletier and Doug Hazelwood. So the story begins with Jay Garrick, Max, Bart, and Jessie all chilling at Jay's house, and because Wally and Linda have gone on their honeymoon, Jay decides to tell them the story of his and Joan, his wife's, honeymoon back in the 40s. For their honeymoon, they went to New Vegas. And, of course, him being the Flash back in the day and a member of the JSA, it wasn't going to be a normal honeymoon. So, when they get to Las Vegas, I almost keep saying New Vegas. I'm just so used to saying that, but this isn't Fallout. When we get to Las Vegas, Jay and Joan are about to, get busy, have sex. But they suddenly get a knock on the door, and when Jay answers it, that's where he finds the Justice Society, Wildcat, Alan Scott, like Green Lantern, the Atom, Hourman, Dr. Midnight. That's all of them. No Spectre, no Phantom Stranger, no Wonder Woman, which is odd, because in this universe, like, Wonder Woman canonically was still a member of the JSA. It was Diana's mother instead of it being Diana. They show up and they basically want to take Joan and Jay to a casino to have like dinner and just a good time out. And Joan senses that this sounds a lot more like a bachelor party than it does a reception. And she tells Jay to go with his friends and she'll stay back at the motel. And Jay's just like, are you sure? And Alan is just like, best not to argue with the missus now that you're a married man. So they head off to the casino, and when they get there, it's made clear that this casino is owned by a guy known as Rocky Birnbaum. Rocky Birnbaum used to be a criminal who was deep in, like, syndicates and stuff, and he's apparently trying to turn over a new leaf by owning the casino, but they believe that, like, he might be up to something schemy, so while they're having a good time, they can keep an eye on him, and knowing that the JSA is watching him, he probably won't try to do anything shifty. And it turns out they're right. Rocky, like, the syndicate has put money into this casino, and so Rocky owes them a cut of the money that he's been making at the casino, because they've invested in it, and he is apparently making a lot of money from this casino, and the Justice Society know that he's been making a lot of money from this casino. So the syndicate say that they're going to be sending a guy there to check Rocky's books to make sure that he is giving them the money that he owes them. And Rocky is considering just giving them the money because he'd rather give him... because he has been skimming money, and he was planning on leaving with a bunch of money that is the syndicate's money. but he'd rather give it back to them than risk them beating the crap out of him. The JSA show up, which surprises Rocky, and Jay, using his super speed, checks the whole building for drugs or anything suspicious, and he doesn't find anything. So they just have a good time. And meanwhile, 3 Flash villains meet up. We've seen them before. We've seen them before, I think, in a previous issue of The Flash. The Thinker, the Shade, and the Fiddler. They're often a trio. This isn't the first time that they've come together. They want to infiltrate the casino and steal Rocky's money because they know that he's got a lot of money, because they know that the casino is doing really well. So Thinker plans on using his abilities to create hallucinations to help them get a leg up and, steal the money from the casino. But they also know that the JSA is there too, so they got to be careful when they enter the casino because they're going to have to fight the JSA. So the JSA continue just having a good time, and then Jay says that he's going to go back and check on Joan, and that he'll be back later. He isn't planning on coming back. He was deserting the JSA. He later, he gets to Joan and he says to her, it was pretty boring anyway, and I wanted to spend the rest of my time with you and not them. So, Jay, I know you're kind of, wanting to do the right thing and, be with your wife, but at the same time, it's not really an excuse to be don't be a dick to your friends. Tell them where you're going. Don't lie to them. And it's the worst time for him to leave because that's when Shade and Thinker and the Fiddler all attack the casino and they start causing a havoc. And so the JSA tries to fight them, but because this is a Jay Garrick story, the JSA are they get their asses whooped by these 3 villains pretty easily. The Thinker tricks Alan into thinking that, because the Thinker uses an axe against him, and Alan's oh, an axe won't work against me, but then it turns out that the Thinker was making a hallucination, and that the axe is actually a wooden chair, and Alan Scott is weak to wood, so he just gets knocked out by the Thinker. And, the Shade takes down Dr. Midnight, and the Fiddler takes down Wildcat, Hourman, and the Atom, all at the same time, just using his music. How powerful is the Fiddler that he was able to take out 3 members of the JSA at the same time, just using a violin. So Joan tells Jay to go back and see the JSA before coming back to her, because she's like, you shouldn't have just left them. You're kind of being a bad friend. Go and say goodbye to them and then come back. So Jay goes back to the casino, and that's where he finds the 3 villains, and they're actually afraid of Jay because Jay is apparently the most powerful member of the JSA. Not Green Lantern for some reason. Arguably, if we're not counting Spectre, Green Lantern is the most powerful member of the JSA, but because this is a Flash story, it has to be Jay. So Jay beats the Thinker pretty easily. He deduces that, a giant robot is actually a hallucination created by the Thinker, so he just runs straight through it and beats him up. And then, the Shade uses his powers against Jay, and Jay just runs through the Shade's Black Shroud powers and punches the Shade and, headbutts him in the chest. And then he chases after the Fiddler, and the Fiddler runs into Rocky's room where he finds Rocky taking the money that's supposed to be for the Syndicate, because he decided, because he was originally going to give the Syndicate the money, but once the villains attacked the casino, he was like, oh, that's a great way for me to make an escape. They'll destroy the casino, they'll destroy most of the money, I'll take the cut that I hid and make a grand escape. But that gets thwarted because the Fiddler runs in on him, and then Jay runs in on the Fiddler, and the Fiddler starts using his music against Jay, but Jay manages to use his speed to get out of it, and he spins around so fast that he creates a giant gale storm, which blows the violin out of Fiddler's hands and knocks him out. It also blows the money out of Rocky's hands and sends the money flying through a nearby window, and so the money is lost. It eventually gets found by three characters who I haven't even talked about because they're not important to the story at all. They're basically these... I don't even know their names. They don't say their names in this. They just kind of assume that you know who they are, and I just couldn't be bothered looking them up. They're basically just the Three Stooges. They tried to get into the casino earlier and they got thrown out. I just didn't mention it because it didn't matter. They're the ones that find the money. And so that's what happens to the money. They find it. And so, yeah, they take the villains away to jail. And Rocky meets one of the guys sent by the syndicate. And then back to the present, Jessie asks Jay what happened to Rocky. And Jay says, like, oh, I think he's just working in, like, a rundown casino in Las Vegas now. And then they ask him, like, what happened to you and Joan? Like, what happened to the rest of your night? How did you spend the rest of your night? And that's when Jay reveals that the reason why he doesn't like to talk about the story is because, infamously, Jay fell asleep on their wedding night. And so he and Joan didn't even get to have sex. Like, Joan was all ready for him. She dressed all nicely. She had, like, a really nice, really nice lingerie on. And she comes out of the bathroom to find Jay asleep on the bed. And that's it. That's the whole story. And I will say, I think some people might not be fans of, like, the Golden Age characters or Golden Age style stories. I liked this one. Despite the Three Stooge rip-off characters that kind of just have no bearing on the story whatsoever, the rest of the stuff I really enjoyed. The JSA, I like seeing the JSA hanging out, not just being superheroes, just like being friends. Like, you really get to see how they are friends, how they are a family. And I like Jay Garrick, so I always like to see more of Jay's adventures. Like, maybe one day I'll go back and read some of the old Golden Age stories, but for now, this is the kind of stuff I like, so I can witness some of these adventures without having to go back and read the Golden Age stuff. But yeah, now that issue is done, we are moving on to Mark Waid's final issue for The Flash, for now. Issue 162, guest starring Shazam. So, the issue begins with the countdown to the new year, where somebody, because obviously back then people thought of, like, Y2K, the end was gonna the world was gonna end, sorry. That turns out, like, there is somebody who is hoping for that. A mysterious person was hoping for the world to end, and when it didn't, he was very, very upset. And so immediately after, the year 2000 hits, the new year hits, he's like, all right then, plan B. So we then shift to Linda Park, who is late for her announcement as the new anchor at Satellite News, because there is a lot of traffic on the bridge that she's supposed to be on. So Wally shows up and decides to take her, get her to the network at super speeds so that she could make the announcement. And so when they get there, Buck Braddock, president and CEO of Global Satellite News, is there to announce Linda, and she embarrasses her in front of everyone when he refers to her as Linda Flash instead of Linda Park, which really pisses her off. Because she's like, I didn't make a name for myself just to be called Mrs. Flash. I was recruited as Mrs. Park, and I am going to make it very clear to Braddock that that is the person that he hired, not Mrs. Flash. So, Linda actually sees Billy Batson at this function that they've gone to, And Linda and Billy decide that they're going to see a speech being held by Ken Blackwell at 11 o'clock. And Wally isn't a fan of speeches, so he leaves and goes for a little bit of a jog for a while. And so after his jog, he comes back, and Linda and Wally decide to, give Billy a lift to the airport so that he can catch a plane back to Fawcett City. But it turns out that his plane is having technical difficulties and that he's going to have to wait for the next flight. And Billy asks what the next flight, when the next flight is, and the flight attendant says that there's one at 4:15 and one at 6:57. And when she says that there's one at 6:57, this causes Linda and Billy to go into a weird trance, and they start speaking a whole bunch of gibberish. And Wally is like, "Hey, what's going on?" And it snaps them out of it, and they're like, "Whoa, what did we just say?" And all of a sudden, the airport around them transforms into medieval times. There's stone and stuff, but then it very quickly turns back to the airport again. However, one of the planes that was landing, the world around them really did turn in medieval. So the plane tower disappeared. And so the plane, there wasn't a tower, so the plane started going out of control. And even after the airport came back, it wasn't back quick enough for the plane to gain control again. So it's now crashing towards, it's now flying straight towards the airport. So Wally puts on his costume to go and stop the plane, and Billy says Shazam and turns into Captain Marvel and decides to help Flash land the plane. Flash creates a bunch of tornadoes under the plane to kind of keep it upright while Captain Marvel tries to use his strength to stop the plane, but the plane is going at such a speed that if Shazam uses his full strength, he'll accidentally crush the plane. So what Wally does is he uses his Speed Force powers to suck the speed out of the plane so that it can crash into the plane crash foam, landing the plane safely and saving everyone inside it. So after that, Wally is like, right, what was it about, why did you say that weird stuff before? That was weird. Why did you say all that weird gibberish? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you mean. And, but then Linda thinks for a second, she's like, but I feel like I have the vaguest impression that I said something similar, during the speech that Blackwell gave. And so Wally decides to take Billy and Linda to Blackwell's apartment because they believe maybe he's behind this, and they enter the apartment to find something that was once human that has started melting and is just on the floor writhing in pain. And they think it's Blackwell at first, but then they hear a knocking coming from a nearby closet, and they open it up and they find Blackwell tied inside. And it turns out that due to the smell of sulfur that's apparently in the room, Flash and Captain Marvel come to the conclusion that it's very likely that Felix Faust is behind this, because he's one of the few sorcerers that exists, and he's one of the strongest sorcerers that exists, that has the ability to create a homunculus, which is what this is supposed to be. He's created, or a simulacrum is what they say it is. So basically he created an actual copy of Blackwell that went and gave the speech, and then after a certain period of time, the copy, fell apart and died. So, coming to the conclusion that it has to be Felix Faust because he's also an enemy of the JLA, they decide to go and search for him. And, it also turns out that the number that set off, 657, they've come to the conclusion that 657 is the trigger number. And that trigger number was said at the speech by Blackwell, and it's also the time that Billy Batson's show is supposed to air. So they head to the place where his show is supposed to air, and when they head there, they find this place called Alibaba, which overlooks the broadcast tower. So it's like a very suspicious place that Faust would likely be so that he can see everything when it happens. So they head to Alibaba and they find Faust there, and he wasn't expecting them. And so he's like, all right, I guess I'm going to have to take care of you now. And the Alibaba has like neon dragons on a neon sign that looks like dragons, and Faust brings them to life and makes them attack Captain Marvel and Flash. So they face the neon dragons and they use their powers to destroy them and chase after Faust, but Faust creates a magical barrier. However, Captain Marvel has magic powers, so he just punches straight through the barrier and grabs Faust by the throat and is like, how about I drop you off of this building unless you tell us what you're doing? And so Faust reveals his plan to them. Basically, his plan is that he wants to send the world into the Dark Ages when sorcerers ruled. So his plan is that at 6:57, when the show airs, everyone who watches it will chant out the magic, transforming the world into the Dark Ages. Flash and Captain Marvel are like, well, we got an hour to, we got more than an hour to stop this. And Faust is like, yeah, but we're on top of a mountain, so it's going by mountain time. So it's actually going to be 5:57 that the spell goes off here and not 6:57. So that means they have less time to stop this. So the plan, which is insane, is that Flash is going to run one way, and Captain Marvel is going to fly at super speed the other way, and they're going to fly and run around the entire world, picking up speed, until they pass one another, and as they pass, they'll brush against each other and create a, sonic boom that will be big enough to interfere with the broadcast, hopefully shorting out the broadcast as the chant happens, ruining the spell. So they try to do this, and they successfully do it. However, they think they might have done it a little bit too late, because the power shuts off in the network after the chant begins. And Felix is like, yes, I did it. The power's off. It's the Dark Ages. Welcome to the Dark Ages. And then the power switches back on again, and Felix Faust realizes that he's lost and that his plan has failed, and he's like, damn it, I'm gonna have to wait another 336 years to be able to do this again. And Flash is just like, and just a luck, you'll still be in jail then. And so after taking Faust to jail, Billy, Wally, and Linda meet at the train station, where Billy heads off to Fawcett City, and before he gets on the train, he turns to Wally, because Wally is like, speaking of Crash, is that why you're going this way? And Billy is like, nah, I'm eager to get home. But after the furious couple of days we've had, I don't feel like hurrying anywhere for a while. See ya. So it's like, yeah, Billy's deciding to go on the train instead of a plane, because he doesn't want to, after everything that happened recently with the plane, he doesn't want to go on a plane. He just wants to go on the train. And so Billy heads off on the train back to Fawcett City, and Wally and Linda wait on the platform, waving to him, and they're like, bye. And it's also Mark Waid and Brian Augustine saying bye to the reader, for now. And that's the end of the issue. Nice little heartfelt goodbye, because that's it for Mark Waid, for quite a while, for a long time. It's going to be a long time before he comes back. But I won't. I know when he comes back. I haven't read the issues, obviously, because I'm reading these in order. But I know he comes back. But we're not done with this episode, because we got One more issue before we hit Jeff Johns. A filler issue written by Pat McGrill with art by Ron Lim and Doug Hazelwood. Issue 163, guest starring the JLA. So yeah, let's get straight into this one. So the issue begins with another night at the West household where Wally West returns to a dinner that has been made for him by Linda. And so Wally sets the table. He's like, I'm going to set the table at super speed, save you the time, and I'll also set the mood. And he makes candles and stuff and just makes a really romantic night for him and Linda. And then Linda questions to Wally. She's like, I'm not always gonna, this isn't the kind of wife I'm gonna be. I'm not gonna be, having fresh dinners for you every day and stuff like that because I got my own career to focus on. But I am worried about us not having time for each other and how we're gonna make our marriage last long if we're both focused on our careers and we don't have a lot of time to see each other. And Wally's like, Linda, you don't have to worry about that. I love you, more than anything. So... I'll do my thing, you'll do your thing, and then, at the end of the day, I'll always be here, spending the rest of my night with you. Linda points out that they received a late wedding present from an Uncle Toby, and it's just a couple of doves, 2 doves, and they don't like the gift. Linda's like, it just doesn't work with the decor, but we'll send a thank you to Uncle Toby anyway. And Wally's like, I'll send it to him tomorrow. For now, tonight, we're gonna get straight to the real business, the bedroom. And a crime appears on the TV, and Linda's like, you're not gonna go deal with that? And Wally's like, I'll let the police handle it, and if they call me, I'll check it tomorrow anyway. Even if they don't call, I'll check it tomorrow anyway. So they head to bed. And meanwhile, a mysterious figure taps onto his computer and sends out a signal. And the signal blurts out of the 2 doves that they bought. Because Wally is like... Because Wally says, he doesn't have an Uncle Toby. He's like, I thought it was your Uncle Toby. And Linda's like, I don't have an Uncle Toby. And Wally's like, oh, crap. It could have been one of my villains that sent the doves. And so he grabs the doves and he assumes that they are a bomb. So, because the doves are vibrating, and so as he's running to get rid of the doves and throw them somewhere, he throws it, and instead of blowing up, the doves send out a massive frequency that only metahumans can hear, including Wally, and the frequency leads Wally to a set of office buildings, and when he enters the office buildings, he finds a single computer. And he approaches the computer and he sees a list of superheroes, including himself, Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and so he wants to figure out. He doesn't have time to look through all the files and figure out what's going on. So he runs to a computer design lab or something nearby and grabs a bunch of technology. And then runs back to that computer and alters it so that it's become... he builds a supercomputer out of the parts. And then it allows him to gain all the information he needs at super speed so that he can figure out the plan of this mysterious assailant. So what he finds out is that their plan is to attempt to kill all of these different heroes. So Wally decides to go and save them all. The first person he goes to help is Superman. And a bomb has been set off in Metropolis. It hasn't gone off yet, but it's going to go off. And what Superman doesn't know, but Wally does, is that the bomb has kryptonite inside of it. So when it blows up, it will probably kill Superman. And so Wally grabs the bomb before Superman can even realize and takes it into nearby mines for it to blow up. He then heads to Gotham, where he finds that Batman is about to grab onto a bomb that's disguised like the Scarecrow. And so Wally grabs that Scarecrow bomb and takes it away before Batman can blow himself up. He then heads to Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern, And it turns out that this mysterious assailant has replaced Kyle's lantern with a bomb. So, without Kyle realizing, because he's running at super speed, Wally grabs the lantern and throws it away as it explodes. He then heads into the ocean after seeing like the smoke trail of a missile heading into the ocean. He goes in there and finds a nuclear missile heading straight for Aquaman, and he knows that Aquaman isn't strong enough to survive a nuclear blast. So he, using his super speed, opens up the missile and figures out how to change it into a dud by mixing the wires and stuff. And so he makes the missile a dud and then follows the smoke trail that it left back to its origin, where he finds a missile silo, and he enters the missile silo and he realizes that it's actually an underground like base with a floor that's kind of like a treadmill, and it's kind of like running against him. So Wally has to like run fast just to keep a good pace. And that's when the frequency that he heard earlier starts again, and it starts to become a little bit more clearer, and he hears a voice, and the voice is the Turtle. Back from like issue 30 or something. The Turtle is back, and he explains to Wally that he was behind this whole thing. He explains his plan. The reason he's taken so long to enact this plan is because he is the Turtle, and he believes that the slower you plan, the better your plan will be. So he's been spending so much time getting to know every single one of like all of Superman, Batman, like Green Lantern, Aquaman's like secrets and weaknesses, so that he can pretend to kill them. Because the idea is that they were never gonna die. All of those bombs were duds. The reason he did this was to lure Wally to this location, because the Turtle is currently sitting in a chair, and the treadmill floor that Wally is running on is powering the chair. And Wally is currently running at a speed that if he runs any faster, he'll run into the Turtle and possibly kill him. And the Turtle knows that, so Wally slows down, and the Turtle is counting on that, because he says to Wally, the second you slow down, the speed that you're running at will be enough to send me back in time to the 1880s, where I can, like to 1880, where I will rule as a king with this yellow diamond that I have. So honestly, like, his plan isn't too bad. Like, if he's gonna be, like, just a nice king, like, what's the problem? But Wally is a hater, and so he's like, I can't let you just live in peace in the 1880s as a king. And like the Turtle probably won't even affect much of like history that badly. I guess he would though, because he's not supposed to be king in the 1880s. So Wally speeds up anyway and sends the Turtle back in time, because he's like, I don't have time to deal with this. I've got to get back to my wife. So he speeds up on the treadmill, and Turtle is sent back in time, and Wally heads back to Linda, and Linda's just like, because Wally stole the yellow diamond from him. I forgot to mention, Wally stole the yellow diamond from the Turtle without the Turtle realizing, and he gets back and he's like, bought you this, of course. It's got to go back to the museum tomorrow. And Linda's like, the yellow diamond? I thought you were checking out Uncle Toby's turtle doves. And Wally's just like, oh, one thing led to another, and he doesn't really tell her what happened. And Wally's just like, it doesn't matter. Let's just spend the rest of the night together. Like, we've earned this night. And so, Wally and Linda have sex. And meanwhile, the Turtle, thinks he's arrived in the year 1880, but it turns out that he hasn't. And he doesn't have the yellow diamond. He's like, I don't need that diamond. I can still rule over these dimwits. But then he realizes that he hasn't landed in the year 1880. He has landed in prehistoric times and is currently surrounded by dinosaurs. And so Wally has kind of like sent the Turtle to his death, which is kind of out of character for the Flash. After, like, I didn't think about it at the time when I read this, but like going back through it now, I guess the Flash just kind of sent the Turtle to his death. I we know that this isn't the last time we're ever going to see the turtle. He'll come back, so Wally probably knew that, like, he probably left him there for a bit and then went back and got him later. He was like, alright, I've had enough fun with sending Turtle to prehistoric times. I'll go save him. And yeah, that's the end of that issue, and, yeah, that's, the next issue is actually the first Jeff Johns issue, but I'm going to be saving that for the next episode, which should be next week. Yeah, next week's video will be a Flash video. Yeah, so we'll save Jeff Johns for then. I kind of want to, start that run on a fresh video. But that's not the end of this week's episode, because we got one more comic book that we're going to be talking about, because it's one that I can't really fit anywhere. Like, this is the best place to talk about it, because it's just a one-shot, so if I made it its own video, it would just be too short. And I also don't want to put it at the start of the next video. I'm talking about The Flash Time Flies, which was a one-shot that came out, like, just after Mark Waid's run and just before Jeff Johns' run. So yeah, we're going to be talking about that. It's only 48 pages, not a very long story, so yeah, let's check out The Flash Time Flies and see what this is all about. So, The Flash Time Flies, written by John Rosen with art by Seth Fisher. This Flash story is probably one of the craziest Flash stories I've ever read. It very much reminds me of, like, those weird futuristic science fiction movies, like what's it called? Like Total Recall. Those futuristic movies where, like, humans have evolved to be, like, really weird. There's, like, weird technology in it. It's like Total Recall meets, like, the weird stuff from Wild Wild West with, like, the spider stuff. Like, there is literally a guy who is nothing but a head in a spider robot suit in this story, which is exactly like Wild Wild West, which makes me wonder if John Rosen was inspired by that movie, or, like, he likes Wild Wild West. So the premise of this story is we follow a man known as Kryozere. I'm going to refer to him as the Blur, because I don't know if I pronounced his name wrong. Because that's the name he'll go by throughout most of this story, is the Blur. Basically, he is a pilot, who was flying faster than any other pilot ever did, and he flew so fast in his plane that he ended up in the Speed Force and started catapulting throughout time, and he was vibrating through time so fast that he actually causes time to end in thousands of years instead of billions of years. So billions of years just flew by in, like, 1,000 years. So Wally West knows that this happens, so in the year 2002, he uses the cosmic treadmill to transport to the future, because he gets a bit of a lockdown on where the Blur might end up, and so he travels to that point in time in order to find the Blur and try and figure out how to fix this. He hopes that if he gets the Blur back to his regular time, figures out what's going on with him, he might be able to fix everything. But when he ends up in the future, he gets attacked by the authorities in the future, because he's an outsider, and they throw a bunch of, like, these, like, weird olive-looking things at him that all burst onto him, and Wally gets stuck in, like, this weird goo and then runs straight into a pillar, and it knocks him out. And so he's taken to a test tube by this lady who will be known as 8 from now on. She's got a much longer name, but her name, they call her 8 because she's got, like, 20 different names, because apparently in the future you have, like, 20 different surnames, and they're all a part of your name, and you have to pronounce every single one, because Wally's like, I'll just call you 8 instead of saying all those. So they're taking tests on Wally, they don't believe whether or not he actually is from the time that he says he is. So they have a big conversation with Wally where Wally gives all the exposition that I've already given. He explains everything that I've said, about how the blur is traveling through time and how he came to this time to find him. And so Wally explains to them that if he doesn't find this guy, it's the end of the world. Time is going to end faster than it should. And so they agree to help Wally find this guy. And Wally actually sees, so the blur appears in this future that Wally is currently in. And immediately we see the effects of the blur's powers. So because he is trapped halfway between Speed Force and reality, the blur can't stop moving. He's constantly vibrating. And so he sees everything in slow motion, and he can just kind of pull everything apart, and he can take people's clothes off and put them back on without them realizing, which is what he does in this. So before Wally can go and try and find him and talk to him, the 8 gives him a new costume that they've made for him in the future, because they say it's going to be better for him to wear this costume in the future. It's made out of living octopus skin and stuff. And then they stick this thing up Wally's nose because they explain to Wally that he can't breathe their air for too long because it's toxic for people from his time. So this thing that they stick up his nose will allow him to breathe their air for at least two days. But if he's there any longer, he'll have to get his genes operated on so that he can, breathe their air. So he's got 2 days, and he'll either die or be forced to live there forever. So he puts on this new suit and he heads off searching for the blur, and he actually follows the blur's trail of destruction, where the blur has just been pulling things apart as he's been walking through this future. The blur finds a tunnel because he's actually been led to this tunnel by this man whose name is Anton Musenda. Now basically, Anton Musenda is a guy from 2002 who was studying the Speed Force, and then he died. But before he died, he had his people cut his head off and put it into cryogenic stasis so that when the future came, they could pull his head out and try and build a body for him. So they've been working on making a new body for him, and until then, he has this giant spider mech suit that he walks around in. And he basically tells the blur that he'll be able to help the blur finally stop moving, because that's all the blur wants to do, is he wants to stop moving. And so Anton promises that he will help him stop moving if the blur helps him with his research. And so Wally is following this trail led by the blur, which eventually leads him to the tunnel where he meets Anton and the blur face to face, and he finds out that Anton has created a suit for the blur to use, which allows him to control his powers better. He can use his powers. So basically his powers are he can touch things and put the Speed Force into them and then cause them to vibrate and stuff. And he can cause them to vibrate so much that they will burst apart and stuff like that. So that's his abilities. So Anton, the Flash, shows up to meet the blur, and Anton lies to the blur and basically tells him that the Flash is a spy from his time who was trying to destroy his research. And so Anton and the blur both Anton tries to kill the Flash, tries to kill Wally, and the blur just tries to get away from Wally. because Anton's just like, run, kid, like he's gonna try and kill you. And so so the Blur believes Anton and runs away from Wally and escapes. And so Wally has to chase after the Blur throughout the city. And the Blur tries to get away from Wally by using his Speed Force powers to cause objects to, fly at Wally and get in his way. So Wally jumps into a nearby, flying car or, future alien car and tries to fly it through the city to look for the Blur, but he can't drive it properly, so he ends up just crashing into a bunch of other alien vehicles. But luckily, he sees the Blur in the distance and he chases after him, and eventually he manages to stop the Blur by throwing a bunch of wooden sticks at him, causing him to fall over, and then he runs around the Blur and sucks all the oxygen out of him so that the Blur gets dizzy, so that he can finally talk to him and have a proper conversation. And basically the Blur just says, I saw my family die instantly because of what's happened to me. I've been moving through time. You don't know what it feels like to be vibrating through time and be the reason why, your family died in seconds and why the whole universe is dying in 1,000 years. Why should I care about everyone when I've already lost everything? All I want to do is just stop. And Wally is like, well, you kind of know how to stop a little bit because you're choosing to be in this time instead of continuing to catapult through time. And I'm guessing this isn't the first time you've stepped out of the Speed Force. And so, Wally tries to explain to the Blur that Anton is evil, and the Blur is like, I don't believe you, and he tries to escape into the Speed Force, and he realizes that he can't get into the Speed Force, so he decides to run back to Anton to ask him why he can't get back into the Speed Force. So the Blur runs back to Anton, and he finds out that Anton has been using him the entire time. Oh, that dastardly Anton. He's a scheming backstabber. Basically, the suit that Anton gave the Blur wasn't just helping him control his powers and allow him to stop vibrating and moving through time. It was actually sucking the Speed Force out of him and sucking out his life energy and giving it to Anton to grow his new body. And so the Blur tries to shut down the machine, and Anton's like, it's too late, you can't shut down the machine. And so he attacks the Blur with his spider body that he no longer needs, and the Blur just pulls it apart using his powers and tries to destroy Anton's, because Anton is currently in this big, how do I explain it? It's a big giant vat of green goo that's creating his new body. So Blur is preoccupied with Anton's giant spider robot that's trying to kill him. But luckily Wally shows up and is able to deal with Anton, so he smashes part of Anton's machine, and Anton is like, I'm not so easily defeated. So what Wally does is he grabs Anton by the head and dunks him under the green goo, green water, and basically hopes that he can hold his head underwater long enough that the authorities can come and take Anton away. But he realizes that the longer Anton is under the water, the more energy is sucked out of the Blur, and so Anton is gaining more and more power, and his body is actually gaining the ability to use the Speed Force to morph his body and his arms into anything. So he can turn his arm into a giant tentacle to grab the Flash and start strangling him, which he does. He wraps it around his neck and starts strangling him. But what the Blur does is he uses his abilities while Anton is preoccupied Because Anton is giving like a huge villain speech to Wally, being like, I'm gonna use my powers to become the most powerful being in the universe and get what was owed to me. And so while he's giving this speech, Blur pulls apart all of Anton's machinery and reconfigures it so that instead of the nanotechs absorbing the speed force, they reverse it instead. So instead of giving Anton the speed force to create his body, Anton and Wally fall back into the green water, because Anton's body starts malfunctioning because the nanobots that created his body are malfunctioning. So he falls back into the green water, and when he falls back into the green water, originally the green water created his body, but now that the nanobots have been reversed, they undo his body and reduce him to nothing but a skeleton. It's kind of horrifying. He falls in the water, and then his skull just like rises up from the waters, and that's when Wally realizes that the nanobots have done the reverse and undone his body and basically like eaten his body. It's pretty gross. So now he's just nothing but a skull. And then the Blur, having reversed the nanobot technology, is no longer being powered by it, so he loses the speed force from his body, and because he no longer has the speed force keeping him alive throughout time, he slowly dies, and Wally's just like, I'm gonna take you to the hospital so that you can get better, and he's just like, no, like, can't you see, Wally? Like, I finally stopped. This is all I wanted. And so Wally allows him to pass on and to die, because that's all the Blur really wanted, is that he wanted to stop, and now he can finally be with his family. And so Wally heads back to the year 2002, and what he's learnt from this is that, like, you should never rush through life, and that you should live every moment. Like, live every moment. Don't rush through it. Because eventually, like, because time's running out. You've only got so much time, so don't rush. Take your time. And that's the whole story. Time flies. I hope I explained it well enough. Obviously, there's some deeper stuff to it than that. My job isn't to recollect it page for page, dialogue for dialogue, because I want to give you a reason to check it out yourself, to get to see the artwork, to really see everything that the story has to offer. But overall, time flies. I mean, if you're into like weird alien sci-fi future stuff, you'll probably enjoy it. I think the story kind of lost me. Especially, I don't think it needed to be a 48-page one-shot. I think it could have been a little bit shorter. There's a lot of filler stuff going on in there. But overall, like, it's not bad. It's one of the better one-shots that I've read for The Flash. So definitely recommend checking it out. And that's going to be it for this week's episode of Flash Forward. We did it. We finished the Mark Waid run. It's been a long, like, it's been quite some time. Like, we've been doing this for, like, well over 6 months now, I think, since we started doing Mark Waid's run. And it's been a real blast. I can't believe it's over now. Like, it's going to be a long time before we ever see Mark Waid write another Flash issue, but we got Jeff Johns to look forward to. I'm looking forward to starting to read that, first time reading it. I know nothing about his run, so it's going to be completely spoiler-free, blind. So looking forward to that, because I hear the Johns run is up there as one of the best Flash runs. Yeah, overall, when it comes to Mark Waid's run, it had more highs than it did lows. I think my favorite arcs were definitely the return of Barry Allen and Chain Lightning. Depending on what the day is, like, depending on the day, which one is my favorite would probably change. But right now, I would say my favorite is Chain Lightning, just because it it wraps up like all of like Waid's stories that had been building up to that, and it was the culmination of all that stuff, and we finally got like this grand like event for the Flash, and everyone was there. Barry Allen shows up, and it's probably his. I mean, it's the greatest moment that he has in the Waid run, because like he wasn't even in Return to Barry Allen because that was Eobard Thawne. So it was great seeing Mark Waid actually write Barry Allen for real this time, and he does a really good job. It was a really great moment seeing Barry come and save Wally. So I think the only arcs that I wasn't a huge fan of was Dead Heat. I think was probably Waid's like one of his weakest runs. Hell to Pay was probably his weakest one, but I might put that above Dead Heat just because I really like Major Disaster. I especially really like Waid's version of Major Disaster, so that was definitely a highlight of that arc. And also, Hell to Pay is also a lot shorter than Dead Heat overall, so it's quicker to read. So maybe I would put that slightly higher than Dead Heat. But other than that, like all the other arcs were pretty good. Like Terminal Velocity was pretty great. The Race Against Time, probably I'd probably put that above Dead Heat, but below Hell to Pay, because Race Against Time I wasn't the biggest fan of. I like John Fox. I liked it, but like I'd still put it lower than all the other stuff. But I think for me, the ranking would go Chain Lightning, Return of Barry Allen, Terminal Velocity, Hell to Pay, Race Against Time, and then Dead Heat. I think that's the order I would put like the Mark Waid arcs. Oh, and Born to Run. I'll put like Born to Run. If we're counting Born to Run, which is the Wally West origin story, I'd probably put that above Return of Barry Allen, or like Chain Lightning, Born to Run, Return of Barry Allen. But they're all very close. Like all three of those are very close together. I think they're on kind of the same level. It really just depends what mood I'm in and what kind of story I want to read. But yeah, that's it for Mark Waid's Flash run. And next week we're going to be starting Jeff Johns with issue 164. I hope you really enjoyed this video and listening to this, and I hope to see you next week for more of The Flash. So I'll see you then.